Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Podcast. This is the Ready Steady Play podcast where we talk about board games, things that are interesting to us, things that are coming up, things we've been playing. We will have a news section. We will have games we've been playing. Both will be shorter than normal because then we will have Essen section part one. This is going to be the first slew of games that Barry and I have been looking at that we're excited for in Essen Spiel coming up at the end of October. Barry's got a number of games. I've got a number of games, and we're going to cover, I think, probably the more popular titles at the end of this episode. And then the next episode, we'll cover the other set of titles, which might be the more out there, weird ones. So we'll see if that works out. But either way, they'll all come out before Essen, so you're all good. And Barry's here to join me and talk about some games. How you doing, Barry?
Good. Thank you. Yes, my popular and the general populace popular may not be the same, shall we say. Certainly there's some crossover, but some of the games that interest me are already into the weird and wonderful. So we shall see. Maybe I'll highlight some hidden gems for you.
Yeah, well, likewise, I've got a few oddballs. There's also like a lot of games in the sort of top 50.
Yeah.
What we're talking about here specifically is the Essen preview list, which is on Board Game Geek. And games are ranked in many different ways that you can do. You can rank them alphabetically by publisher if that's helpful to you. But the way the majority of people rank them is by thumbs, which is the number of likes they've gotten from BGG users. And publishers will be going around like paupers begging for your thumbs at this time of year to try and push their game up the preview list near the top. Of course, at the current moment, this year's winner is Orlog, the Prague Astronomical Clock from Spanish board game publisher Perro Loco Games. So we will, of course, talk a bit about that, and we will talk about more in the Essen section, which will be after games we've played and after the news, which is coming up right now.
What's top of the agenda then? First news item.
Well, hot off the how do I say this? We talked about the not secret BGA implementation of Twilight Imperium that was coming up, but I guess Asmodee and or Red Square Games were like, that's not good enough. I want to play against not people because people are awful. And so there's a official digital implementation of TI coming out. A trailer dropped on YouTube. New to the scene of board game implement adapter. Now, definitely new. They've not got a lot of credit.
I mean, they're very possibly made up of other Asmodee purchases.
Oh yeah, we don't know about the pedigree of the employees. We only know what's credited to the label.
I will say I have seen some chatter from the developers already. They seem very involved. They seem very keen on Twilight Imperium in particular. They're they seem to be players. They seem to know what players want. I am optimistic for the implementation. As you mentioned, being able to play effectively on demand against an AI, just as part of a standard single player computer game is appealing, because even trying to get people together to play on Board Game Arena has been a challenge already. Trying to get 6 players together in total to sit down and even asynchronously play a game of Twilight Imperium has proven impossible for me so far. So having computer to play against is beneficial to actually seeing more of the game. Like, I feel like I've not explored loads of areas in Twilight Imperium that I'd like to play this faction, because I've only played, I don't know, like half a dozen factions, like out of all the ones you could do. And then there's more coming, and then there's loads of things that you might want to try. There's different ways, it depends on the agendas that come up, of course, but there's loads of things you could try. You're going to miss some of the politicking playing against the computer, I would imagine, but I'm keen to play around with the mechanics of the game more, and then in real life enjoy more of the politicking as it goes, So I am down for this, as long as the price is semi-reasonable, and I'm not against playing board games on Steam.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very natural collaboration because, when I first started playing Twilight Imperium 4th edition up here, and I hadn't played since the 3rd edition, and I didn't really remember any of it, it was quite intimidating. Like, the people up here had played a lot, and they knew what everything was about. And it's a big commitment. It's a big commitment to a game where you might have a terrible time, especially if you're not doing well or you don't understand basic sort of concepts about the game. And in the first game I played, I was organized into a group by the Twilight Imperium people who had organized these games, the baby table, which I was more than happy to be a part of, and it's an odd fit for me, I guess, because I'm so familiar with games and yet not necessarily across this one.
Yeah.
But we had to pick slices and factions ahead of time. This was mainly a time constrained issue. Slices is the part of the board you start on. This is a hip TI term. I am a hip TI player now, you see. So, but it turned out that being at the baby table, it was fine. Everyone was sort of a relative novice. There was one other player that had played before. I think that, but even that was quite apparent that they'd had played before. There was another player who played before who was very novice and was clearly not confident with the rules, and I had to keep correcting them. So it was probably a good thing I was there as well to help keep people straight on the rules and guide people. But there was one player who had made some strategic errors and just had a terrible time, and it's a real shame. Now
I'll give you the other side of that as well. We, one of the games played recently, a couple of new players haven't played it before, and just you tell everybody, read the rules, watch the video, we'll keep you right, and we'll explain it at the start, but you have to know roughly what you're doing in order to have a good time. And like one of the players in particular, the game dragged on. Like it was 7+ hours and they'd only just started to get it. And just the other players at the table would become somewhat frustrated with the player that still doesn't understand the different phases of the game. It's like, these are things you could have learned in advance. We did go through every single rule up front at the start, but it relied on you having some kind of knowledge of the flow of the game, having watched the video, having at least read the rules or something. It's not that complicated, right? The intricacies come from how that adapts to what people are doing. The phases of the game aren't impossible to grok.
The fourth, I think that because the game is a very thematic game, that is to say there's quite a lot that's in there, which is not necessarily necessary to make a better or more strategically deep game. It's there because thematically it's cool,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be struggling to pinpoint exactly what I would take out if I wanted to make it, say, a leaner game. But, that's not the point. The point is, like, it didn't need to be this big and this long, but that's a part of it as a holistic thing. And so, what they've done with the 4th edition, which is great, is they've streamlined a lot of stuff. All of the steps are there. All of the processes are there. It's once you are sort of confident, I think, with the flow of the game and its very rigid process, then it can flow quite well. And that's, I think, a outcome of being the 4th edition. So, and the text is very precise as well, which is welcome. It used to be a lot more ambiguous. So that's all really good, but I do think that I do think that the process is big and complex enough that just people who are not familiar with something of that scale and that grandeur will find it overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it is, I think, more than many other games, because of its weight and its length, really important that you sort of follow the procedures and follow as well the recommended ways of keeping your cards on the table, keeping your sort of things out, just little things you can do to help you keep track of what's going on, because it's very long and you want to put your cognitive load into the player interaction and the strategies and the timings, and things like that, rather than where did I put that? What am I doing? How many actions do I have left? So it is a game that really benefits from preparation beforehand. And so if this can act as so that's what I'm getting at. If this can act as a training ground for people to sort of get their mind around how these things work, and of course the video game's not going to be polite, it's just going to be rigid, then that's probably quite a good way to sort of learn the game, experiment with the different factions, try things out, and just get some practice in, without having to find a whole bunch of other players or, sort of throw yourself on the mercy of random BGA matchups. I think that's great. I think I hope that it is reasonably priced. I expect 15 to 20 pounds, and I'd like it to be a little cheaper than that, but we'll see.
I think you're over that. I mean, I think Everdale's about there.
No.
And I think this will be closer to your £25 to £35
which is a little, yeah. I mean, I guess you can wishlist it and hope it comes down in price. But...
yeah. It's not going to be AAA price, but it's also not going to be cheap board game price. So we will see. No prices have been announced. Now, we were talking last week about the non-delivery of Merchant's Cove.
Well, this was part of our article about monumental African empires and whether Spiral Galaxy would deliver that. You'd mentioned that tried to deliver Merchant's Cove or something, but it looks like they're actually in the process of doing it right now.
And so if you are a UK backer, specifically of Merchant's Cove, this game is being delivered by Spiral Galaxy Games. You should have an email. If you don't have an email, check your emails or head on over to Spiral Galaxy's Facebook or their main site. There are links to claiming it. It looks like, now I'm not a backer, so I don't know the status fully, but it looks like Spiral Galaxy are requesting additional funds to deliver it. I would expect that is because they've not been paid to deliver it. People seem pleased with the value they're getting for paying for that final bit of delivery, as opposed to kicking off a fuss about it. Everybody seems quite glad that since Merchant's Cove, forget the company, gone under.
Final Frontier Games, I think.
That they are getting the game.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that this is, obviously the right thing to do. I think it's a little curious about why they're not more transparent about what has happened and what they're doing to make it right and all that kind of stuff. Maybe they just don't want to get involved in any major discussions. I don't know. I can understand how this whole thing is difficult, and it seems like ultimately they're doing the right thing and people seem grateful. That's great. Fingers crossed they can do something similar for monumental African empires. I don't know how that situation is different from this one necessarily. So I couldn't tell you because we don't know anything about really what's happened with Final Frontier or what the holdup was with Spiral Galaxy delivering this stuff, or necessarily why they need to charge backers more money. Now, I'm going to assume that they're doing all of this with the best intentions, because I like to assume that. But I don't know. We don't know anything because they haven't made any official statements. I hope that they'll do the same thing for backers of that other campaign. And I guess this is going to be something that hopefully is not going to happen a lot more, but also might happen more frequently.
Yeah,
so,
gotta be cautious.
I guess, I mean, I don't really know what we can do, right? But just to finish up on Spiral Galaxy here, here's hoping they can do more of that stuff. But I sincerely hope that they don't have to start fulfilling more campaigns from companies that have gone bankrupt. But, I don't, it seems to be happening more and more. And so maybe that's just going to become a regular thing, And I'll just say again what I said last week, which is that there's a perfectly good pre-order system. Now, I don't know why we're not all demanding that companies use that if we think they can or should be using it, because all it is the same as the Kickstarter or crowdfunding or GameFound process, but with buyer protection. So, and again, I'm not really sure exactly what kind of buyer protection that gets you if the company goes bankrupt and declares bankruptcy. But maybe this is something that I should look into more. If it's something that you're interested in, leave a comment, I guess. I personally feel like at this stage, most of the campaigns I see on GameFound could well be using a pre-order system. And so, and GameFound offers one. So I really don't understand why not just seamlessly shift over to that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely some crowdfunding games, of course, are speculative. They're looking for funding to finish development and to perhaps be an early game for that company. But other companies are just using it as pre-order system, so let's make them use it as a pre-order system. But we will continue to cover crowdfunding games, and one that was unexpected popped up on my radar just a couple of days ago.
I was very surprised to see this.
Yeah, so that is a new version of Terra Mystica. And this is done by Steamforged Games. So is it Feuerland that do
Yes.
the current version of Terra Mystica? Yes. I don't know what deal has occurred for Steamforge to take this over. It is going to be a big box all-in version, as far as we can tell. Not a massive amount of information yet. I don't think... There's only the box really available, and on the box it looks kind of hobbity.
Yeah,
right? It's only,
it does look like
the only real way to describe it. Kind of hobbit.
Yeah.
And I do not appreciate that look. Doesn't seem that seems to be a majority opinion, not one that I just hold. And they're also a little unclear at the moment about whether it's going to include the single-player Automa, which is available currently for Terra Mystica. Now, I wonder if that's to do with the fact that I think it's Automa Factory that
it is,
technically made that, and not part of the original license. And similarly, at Essen, they are releasing the fan factions, the official fan factions. Spoiler alert, I'll come on to that later. That is also not confirmed to be in the box. So what you might be doing is buying a big box version that does not contain all the content, or less content than is currently available. So the last thing that people were complaining about, because people love to complain, myself included, is that it's not a re-implementation of Age of Innovation.
Which is a different
game. Which is a different game, part of the same...
It's the same designers. It's a sort of evolution...
Spiritual sequel.
Yeah, let's say a successor. I mean, I've played them all. I've also played Terra Nova, but nobody seems to be asking for that.
I've not played Terra Nova.
I've played them all.
I've played the rest. Yep. I enjoyed Age of Innovation, but everybody's like, oh, well, Age of Innovation's the better game, so why not do that one? And I'm like, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're wrong, and I hate you. So that is where we're at with those. Wait and see. It could be that... I'm not a huge fan of the Terra Mystica art, right? The art is...
functional.
Yeah, no.
Slightly better than functional.
Yes, but it's not in a style that I particularly am drawn to, and I'll be like, wow, I really want more art in this style. I do not. I would be all for a all singing, all dancing upgrade version of it. This does not seem to be what appeals to me either. But I will wait and see the full thing to see what else is in there. You know, double layer player boards with cool new individual shapes for each faction, for your meeples and your houses and your temples and strongholds and all that kind of thing. Yeah, that sounds pretty good, but not if it's only most of the game. Like, you got to convince me to rebuy everything.
Yeah. So I too have everything for Terra Mystica, including the 2 expansions. I really like Terra Mystica. I also like Age of Innovation. I also like... I actually like Terra Nova as well, the simpler version of the game. It's also really quite good. It really is sort of covering all of its bases for anyone who might like any weight of this genre, right? Because it really does feel like, you know, Age of Innovation is sort of... I'm not going to say a step up, because it feels more kind of like a step sort of sideways for people that have played a lot of Terra Mystica and now want everything to be modular. And so it front loads a lot of the decision making. You're drafting powers and you're drafting sort of long-term powers that are going to be really consequential. And you do draft the races in Terra Mystica, but now you're making more drafting decisions at the outset. And then it gives you more tracks to focus on and divide your attention between, and more resources to manage. And you've got to sort of decide which strategic path you're going to explore based on that opening draft and maybe what opportunities are coming up during the game. So it's just kind of more broad and more stuff. I'm not necessarily sure that the strategic horizons of the game make it like massively deeper and more satisfying. I think that, you know, if you've played Terra Mystica, I can see how if you played it a lot, you'd want something to be more variable, want something more modular. And that's what Age of Innovation offers. And Terra Nova is just it's a simplification. They took all the resources and they said, none of those exist now. It's all money. It's just money. Everything costs money, and you just pay some money for stuff. And I actually appreciate how much faster it makes the game. It does feel like Terra Mystica light and a bit more accessible. And the rules are just simpler and have been simplified. The map is smaller. I like all of those things about Terra Nova. The feeling I got when I saw this campaign pop up was like, oh, Steve, because what doesn't make sense to me is that we just had a Terra Mystica big box like a few years ago. There was a Terra Mystica big box, and I think it was released alongside the Automa expansion, because the Automa expansion, I think, was in the big box, but then for people that already had this stuff, it was also released separately. And that was nice. I like that. I had all the stuff. I didn't really want to buy the big box, so I just bought the Automa expansion. Great. But this felt to me a little bit like Steamforge going, hey, we're going to do an Awaken Realms, you know?
Yeah.
Look, it's Terra Mystica Special Edition, you know? Because they were like, we need an Agricola, or we need a Castles of Burgundy. What is a sort of a classic Euro that could have lots of scope for fancification, deluxeification, you know? And, you know, I mean, this has been a lot more available and a lot more in print than those other games. Famously, Agricola and Castles of Burgundy have tons of tiny expansions that are hard to track down. And so consolidating them all into one box is very welcome. The main criticism of Agricola 15, which was the 15th anniversary edition that came out not long before the special edition, was that it didn't contain all the mini expansions and things that people wanted to track down, and had some compatibility issues with them as well. So getting it all together holistically in one box where everything's guaranteed to be compatible was a big deal, was important for fans of the product, right? They're willing to splurge on something like that. Terra Mystica doesn't have that. It's only got 2 expansions. There's never been the compatibility issues. And, well, it's got the Automa expansion, the fan races.
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone's sort of crying out for that stuff to be sort of officially incorporated into one place. And you just said that they're releasing the fan factions at Essen anyway. So I don't know. They'll need to do something really stunning, I think, with this to make a really stunning product. Because I think if it's functionally just the same stuff over again with different art, I don't know if there's much demand for that.
Agreed. And what I've seen of just the box art, again, not a style that's immediately going to appeal to people that were put off by the existing style, if that's the thing holding them up. So it has to do more.
Well, there was a brief period after Terra Mystica came out when it was one of those sort of like weird Euros where nobody's really sure how popular it's going to be, and nobody's sure if it's going to get reprinted, and the demand for it was like sky high. But then they came out with the expansion and they did another print run, and it sort of established itself as a really popular game. And then it's just been in print ever since. It's not like it's been hard to find or anything like that, you know. So that's why it's nice to see something like Container come back onto crowdfunding, or Dogs of War, which we're about to talk about, because these things have actually been out of print and hard to find, and the secondhand market's been astronomical. So yeah, it seems like a really odd choice. We'll have to see the campaign. I also, you know, I remember when Gaia Project came out, everyone was complaining about the plastic buildings. They loved the wooden pieces from Terra Mystica. They hated the new plastic pieces. Now, I'm not a plastic wood purist or anything, but I do think you could lose, because I do think individual pieces is one way that they could make it really appealing as a special edition. But I think they'd have to go down the route of the re-wood kind of thing, you know, rather than plastic, because I think it's hard to make the plastic look really deluxe, you know. And even with Castles of Burgundy Special Edition, I much prefer the acrylic tiles to the miniatures.
Yeah, same. I didn't go all in on the miniatures. I got the castles.
Yeah,
but not everything.
Yeah, the castles are nice.
But we'll see. I may get involved. We'll see. And then, as you mentioned there, another reprint or redo of an existing game coming to GameFound by Play to Z is Dogs of War. So Dogs of War is a Paolo Mori game, combat on tracks like Precursor, to Blitzkrieg, I believe. I've not played Dogs of War. I know it's on your shelf.
Yep. I can talk about Dogs. I'll talk about Dogs.
There are some updated rules. There are some changes to how it looks. They put it in a smaller box, and they've gone for wooden pieces. I believe there's big plastic pieces or in the original box.
Quite famous for those ridiculous plastic pieces.
Yeah, and I don't think they do that much. But so some changes, but before you talk about the game itself, the only thing I've really got to go on is the campaign, and the campaign has not been off to the best of starts. The first thing is they've baked in $15 of credit for the Play to Z store. Now, at the moment, it does not deliver outside North America.
The Play to Z store?
Yeah, the Play to Z store. They have said that by the time this is done, that will change. But Play to Z also only have about 7 games, very few of which you'd want. So the questions become, are people paying for this $15 of credit as part of the cost? Now, the cost of the game isn't overly expensive unless you get the metal coins. You can get 30 metal coins for £25. Well, I could just use pound coins at that point. The deluxeification, that's the only upgraded version, right? You've got the basic version, and you've got the version with the metal coins. It's a very expensive price for just metal coins, even though they're, custom printed. And similarly, they launched without any information on the updated rules. They've said there was updated rules, and then there's like, oh, well, the rules change a little bit, but not that much. We didn't think we needed to tell you what they were. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, why? How could you possibly think that your selling point is it's updated, we've changed it, we've tweaked it, we've made it better, but we're not going to tell you what those rules are. Now, the rules are now up in a draft form, but that took 2-3 days for them to put it together and let people know. And it was just super weird that that's kind of what they've gone with. And then the final sort of selling point on this one, there's 4 alternate art player screens. But they're already redoing the art. So they're giving you 4 new player screens with different art, and then they're giving you another 4 player screens with different art. And it's a little weird. It's a little odd.
5, right? 5 player screens. It's got to be. I mean, I'm only saying that because I know it's a 5-player game.
If it is a 5-player game, then there will be 5 of them, I guess. 3 to 5 players.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure they hadn't also changed it to a 4-player game.
To a 4-player game. Oh, they've changed the number of rounds. So it's gone from 4 rounds to 3 rounds. But yeah, whatever they're doing, they're giving you like a second set of screens.
Sure.
I mean, if to be fair, I'll tell you what, if they're alt gender screens or something, fine, I kind of get that. If it's just different cool bits of art, well, it's not really. You can only ever use one at a time.
I mean, I'm not going to say no to
have
extra.
Have a picture of it.
Yeah, also have a picture of it, please. But I'm not going to say no to extra paper screens because the player screens are important and also can get tatty. So I'm not going to say no to extra player screens, but also it's not a huge selling point for me. Like, I would like to see maybe other stuff. I don't know. Yeah,
so they've put the rules up and it's there. I think shipping's also quite expensive to the UK. So the base game is £38. What would that work out as? For $50 maybe?
Yeah.
Give or take. So $50. And then shipping is $28. And it does go up a lot for other regions as well. And then you've got VAT on top of that.
Right. So if you back the $50 version, you're actually probably paying
$100.
28 plus VAT on $50 is
no, but
$10.
you pay VAT on the shipping as well, don't you?
Oh, okay. So then VAT on
so it's 78.
So it's another $15.
Yeah.
So
you end up paying $90 for the game.
Okay. No, that's a real pity.
Now, I don't know. I don't 100% know. Obviously, Play to Z and these games are backed by Shut Up and Sit Down, who are now everywhere, but originated in the UK. This isn't a UK first campaign though, which is fine. Like most of your business is going to come from North America probably. But it would have been good to have seen some additional consideration for the UK pundits, mostly because that's me, and I don't care about Brazil. Whatever, charge them anything, doesn't affect me. but the UK, that's what I care about.
I do think it's really interesting.
$86 to Brazil.
It is, I was trying to get a sort of a better sense of what the relationship here is, and it looks like Play Dizzy is just a North American-based publisher, and they've created some kind of, well, they've called it a strategic partnership with Shut Up and Sit Down, where games that Shut Up and Sit Down would like to see back in print are they're going to attempt to reprint them, and sort of apply the Shut Up and Sit Down philosophies to it. So smaller box, more practical box, or in the case of this, they've tried to sort of, streamline the rules, make the game shorter, I guess, and that's welcome. I actually tend to agree with both of those positions, at least. It's notable that the Shut Up and Sit Down presents sort of line from Play to Z are the games they've worked on in this capacity with, Shut Up and Sit Down, who are positioning themselves as industry experts. And, as someone who's talked about board games in one way or another for a decade in media, or just shy of it, I appreciate that, yeah, they probably are experts. It's hard to do this for that long without developing expertise. And it's nice to deploy it to help a publisher. I do think this is a very challenging relationship. I think it's one that the consumer needs to keep a close eye on, because it can very quickly become something that's not really consumer focused, not prioritizing the consumer, but rather an advertising thing.
Yeah, like the Shut Up and Sit Down effect is somewhat famous across board games, where they'll pick up a slightly older board game that's perhaps between print runs. They will talk about it and extol its virtues. People rush out and buy it, and then suddenly it's out of print.
Or out of stock everywhere.
Or out of stock, at least, until for some time. So they know that, and the publisher must know as well, they have this platform where their recommendations carry financial benefit to a publisher.
Yeah. Now, I would say that, this is where, because a lot of other board game content creators have also done this exact same thing. There is the Dice Tower approves, sticker that's on tons of stuff. And before Shut Up and Sit Down presents, there was Shut Up and Sit Down approved sticker as well. Albeit, I don't think that was an official collaboration, but rather, something that the publisher could get if they'd got a good review. They could reach out to Shut Up and Sit Down for the stickers. Whereas I think the Dice Tower one is actually a monetary.
No, I think that's the same thing. Like the Dice Tower one was specifically it was something Dice Tower made available for free if they'd give it silver or gold.
Editor Mike just jumping in here to clear up a few things, because I was thinking about the Dice Tower Essentials line, which I've confused with the Dice Tower Seal of Approval. Now, functionally, these are the exact same thing as the Shut Up and Sit Down Recommends sticker and the Shut Up and Sit Down Presents strategic partnership with Play to Z. So the Dice Tower Essentials line is a series of games put out by Arcane Wonders that the Dice Tower rate highly on their channel. And the Dice Tower Seal of Approval is a sticker that's available to any publisher who approaches them for a game that's being given a certain rating on their channel. And the Shut Up and Sit Down Recommends sticker is the same as the Seal of Approval. Shut Up and Sit Down Presents seems to be functionally basically the same as the Dice Tower Essentials line. So I guess what I'm trying to say is these sorts of arrangements with publishers have been made before. It's not unheard of. And I guess all I'm trying to get at in this section really is that you have to be conscientious as a consumer of these sort of arrangements, because while I'm sure they're all made with the best of intentions, once these kinds of professional entanglements begin, it can become more difficult to be unbiased. It's just a very natural complication. So I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it necessarily, and I think it's actually a good thing to have critics lending their expertise to publishers to help distribute better games. I think that's functionally a consumer positive relationship. All I'm saying is that this might not always manifest in the most consumer positive way. And so as consumers, it is, up to the consumer, me, most of the time that's me as well, is that it is up to the consumer to be mindful of the differences. And I think it would probably be nice to make these lines a little bit more distinct, because even me, who is a media entity commenting on them, was struggling to differentiate between the Dice Tower seal of approval and Dice Tower Presents, as well as the Shut Up and Sit Down recommends and Shut Up and Sit Down presents. Because even me, a media commentator who is commenting on the nuances between Dice Tower Essentials and Dice Tower Seal of Approval and Shut Up and Sit Down recommends and Shut Up and Sit Down presents, was struggling to understand the fundamental differences. So if you're going to do something like this, I think make sure you make it completely clear what the distinctions are. And if possible, put out information on your website relating to these nuances. Now, I'm not saying that these creators haven't done that. I think they have actually. Hats off to them. These distinctions should be made as transparent and as clear as possible, because this is a very gray area where typically, commentators who are holding publishers to account are now entering into a financial relationship with them, which could fundamentally be seen as a conflict of interest. So transparency wherever possible is, of course, the best course of action.
So the silver and gold. So Dice Tower approves and excellent, seal of excellence.
Seal of excellence, yeah.
Were the two, and I've seen it before. I don't 100% know the details of the ins and outs, but my understanding of it from either previous video or actually the content on the page was that if a game received either of those accolades, the publisher was allowed to put it on their box for free.
Well, I have no real problems with that at all, because fundamentally that's something that's happening sort of independently, and then being offered to publishers. And functionally, we are here because we want you to find good games to play, and so if those stickers help you to identify games that are good and worth your time, then that's exactly what we're trying to do with this content. Now, when it comes to this publishing sort of development, I don't think it's a natural next step. I think it's a bit of a sideways step. I appreciate Dogs of War was out of print. It wasn't getting reprinted, as far as I'm aware. I don't imagine there was a big bidding war to reprint it. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but, it's been impossible to get since the original Cool Mini or Not campaign. And I guess Play to Z worked with Shut Up and Sit Down to revive it. That's, I guess, fine. Although I'm not a massive fan of content creators getting into board game publishing. But anyway, that's not what this is really about. Dogs of War is a game that I have played. And for a start, it's 3 to 5 player, right? So if you're in for a 1 or 2 player game, you can go home. It's not for you. It's not that. It is absolutely more chaotic. It's best, in my opinion, best at 4 and 5. So it wants a higher player count. Functionally, you are all mercenaries bidding over a series of battlefields. And these battlefields are tug of wars, sort of back and forth. And what you've got is a sort of overarching track that represents the value of the houses, the noble houses that are fighting in these battles. So over the course of the game, there's, I think, something like 6 noble houses. They're all on this track. They all start on -1. And the track goes up to like 6 or 8. And so every time they win a battle, they get to step some steps up this track. And this is the sort of notoriety of the noble house. And of course, you are mercenaries. You've got a bunch of army soldiers. You can deploy these into these battles at, over the course of each round, 4 rounds in the Simon version and 3 now, I guess, and to try to swing the battle in one way or the other. And the outcome of the battle will move the noble houses up the track. And at the end of the game, everyone will reveal all the influence they've amassed with each of these houses by dint of lending them soldiers, playing the game. You can acquire more influence with each house during the game. You also start with some. and you will work out what your total points are. So if you have 3 shields with a house that never moved, it's -3 points, right? Whereas if you got a house on the 7 space of the track, it's 21 points. So what you want is to make sure that the houses you care about get up that track, and the houses that each other player cares about do not. However, all the shields are secret. Nobody really knows what anyone else is trying to do, so it's pretty chaotic. There is also a sort of a system of managing cards and soldiers and things, and the best way to get these resources is to play into the battles, because you get paid if you win, or if you're on the winning side. There's little icons that you can sit on, and those are going to be bonus rewards as well that you'll get. But, if you commit your resources to these certain fights, you may not have them later for future fights. It's sort of set up in such a way that each house will fight each other house one time, and then that will be the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I dare say I've probably not played, like they've talked about here about, I can see on the GameFound campaign that they've tried to ramp up the rewards in the 3rd round now, because they found it was getting too predictable or too fixed or too hard to come back from a loss in the 4th round. And I've not played enough to notice that problem. Or if we did notice that problem, we weren't aware of it, because all the scoring's hidden until the end, and nobody really knew. I mean, people might have had a good instinct, but I've always had a good time with this game. I do think it is very chaotic and kind of a vibes-based game, because you don't really know what anyone's trying to do. I mean, I think if you wanted to play it very strategically, you probably could. And if you're very good at sort of card counting, in this case, you're trying to work out what crests everyone has. If you're tracking what they're picking up over the course of the game and you're being very mindful about that, it's quite hard when there's 3 or 4 other players. But, if you're being mindful about that, then you could probably play a lot more strategically. This is one I've always played down the pub.
Right.
Or at big conventions with lots of beer. And we've always sort of had a rowdy, good time shouting at each other with it. And I think it fits that niche real well. It's not a super long game, but I can appreciate the desire to make it shorter. I think, if it wanted to be any longer, it'd probably need to be a bit deeper or give you a bit more information. But I think it balances quite well. And like I said, we've always played a rowdier game with more people, so it's been quite a social affair. I do think it's a shame they got rid of the original commanders, because they were great. These ridiculously overproduced Simon minis, all of which had giant hats. And that was the whole thing, just giant hats. They also had a whole bag of minis to represent all the different soldiers, which I can see have now become tokens. I think that's right. I actually had the miniatures. I sold them because they were awful. You just use the cards. It's easier and better.
Much better.
Yeah, a ton of plastic minis just blocked the board up. It was hard to see. They were not good. People compare it to War of Whispers, which is a more recent title that's quite acquirable. I'm not sure if that's entirely fair. I think War of Whispers is a little less dynamic in sort of terms of changing your allegiance. It's got more fixed positioning in where you can sort of go. At least this is my instinct. And so it's harder to sort of... War of Whispers gives you like 1 or 2 big opportunities to sort of change your allegiance, right? Whereas Dogs of War, it's a lot more sort of minor opportunities to pick up a little extra bits and pieces here and there. Usually if you're picking up more influence with the houses, it's at the cost of some money or some card, which is painful because the resources are quite scarce and quite tricky to manage, which is quite typical of a Palomori game, which this is. I can see they've compared it to Blitzkrieg because it's also Palomori and that's also Tug of War, but that's a very, very different thing because it's a 2-player game and it's head-to-head. If you like War of Whispers, definitely check this out. If you like sort of rowdier games with hidden scoring where people's objectives and intentions are opaque, definitely check this out. I wish it was cheaper than $100. That seems way too expensive. My instinct is that's too expensive. What is that in pounds?
It is 75 quid.
75 pounds. I think that's that, and that's not including the metal coins, right? Now, I do believe that the original came with a bunch of plastic coins that are terrible. I think we always use our Roxley game counters when we play. I think the additional player powers are welcome. The player powers are quite consequential. The original didn't have quite enough in the core box. They were almost all add-ons from the campaign that you could get. I lost one, so now I'm missing one and I can't replace it. But so I think it's welcome that they've added a lot more powers and things like that. But I think it doesn't quite feel like, I think, a £75 game. Having said that, it is a good game if you like negotiation and sort of rowdy and uncertainty in your game.
To be fair to them, so Play to Z are fairly active on the campaign. Just a few hours ago there, I noticed they're going to try and reduce the shipping. They've said shipping will be reduced, update today or tomorrow. They are also looking to provide some extras than the 5 alternate art screens. So working on that. And then similarly, one of the questions was like an upgrade pack for the old version. They're like, well, quite a lot different there, but they're looking at that as a separate upgrade tier. If it's just cards, fine, but there's a few other bits and pieces that have to be included to make it all work. Sure. And so they're taking feedback. One last one for the news from me then, and that is that Stonemaier Games are currently in the process of announcing fan-designed bird promo packs. So this is for Wingspan, a game everybody owns. Over 2 million copies sold, I think, at this point. And been a long time since we've heard anything about Wingspan. Antarctica should be the next expansion, but that's a long time coming.
Oh, have they announced that?
And what, Antarctica being the next one?
Yeah.
Well, in the big box, the coupe or whatever it was that you could buy, it's got the dividers for South America, Antarctica, like the remaining expansions. There's 7 expansions total. And they gave you the dividers in the big box, so they're planning that. I understand there's a lot of art that goes into it, right? So they've got to do that, and a lot of balancing, deciding what birds go in it, and then a lot of balancing for all your objective cards
to maintain. The Antarctica promo pack is 2 cards: Penguin and Arctic Tern. That's it.
I think you'd be surprised at how many birds there are. There's over 11,000 species of birds, and that's not even including the extinct ones, which is something else they're going to be looking at. Regardless, none of that's happening right now. Right now, they're doing fan design promo packs. So it's 6 promo packs of 25 cards each. Each pack is for new birds in regions that already exist. So Europe, North America, Oceania, Asia. So the ones that are already out. And the breakdown of the birds, this was opened up to as a fan project, where fans were able to design the birds, and the stipulations were that these had already had to be released to people to playtest. So everything's been playtested. A couple of the names have changed and stuff, and a couple of powers have been balanced and stuff, but had to be out there. You could not introduce any new abilities. So, sorry, let me take that back. In Wingspan, there's a number of powers. Powers that trigger when you activate a row of birds, powers that trigger when you play them, powers at game end, round end. You couldn't introduce anything brand new.
Right, so you could have new powers, but they had to have the same trigger windows as the existing expansion.
Yeah, like another player does something, or you trigger it, or game end, round end, those kind of things. It couldn't be something brand new.
Well, I think so with end of round was from the second expansion, so presumably the first expansion promo pack couldn't have that either.
Well, it's territory-specific promo packs, yeah, so I guess if the European birds wouldn't have powers from subsequent ones.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure, they're not showing all the cards, but there's 6 different packs of 25 birds, giving you another 150 cards, which is the equivalent, is greater than the number of cards I think were in either or any of the expansions, in fact. I think there's 170 cards in the core set, and then about 90 odd cards in each of the expansions. And so you're getting a whole bunch of new birds that you can slot in straight away, does you over until the Antarctica expansion eventually does come out. And yeah, like, interesting. I'm going to talk about Wingspan in my played games, so I'll come back to this, but it wasn't something I was expecting. It'll be launched middle of October. You'll buy it from the Stonemaier site direct, or if you're like the champion product, but it should also be available at Essen. There you go, boom. Look at that, everything just ties together.
Everything, all roads lead back to Essen. Well, we will talk about Wingspan in a bit. For now, just another quick update. Don't Panic Games, the French company that bought Anastyr and Hell from Simon, have just made a statement saying that they appreciate all of the backers that backed these campaigns previously to get them to where they are. And they don't know if they can honor any of the commitments Simon made, but they're going to look into seeing what they can do. And that's what they've said. Now, they did make a nice statement. I thought it was reasonable. I do think that realistically, I mean, I appreciate that Simon are trying to fund their remaining commitments and they're being realistic about what they can deliver on moving forward, given that obviously these were campaigns that were, well, they were actually campaigns they bought from Mythic, who went bankrupt. So these had already collapsed. They weren't going to get delivered. Simon attempted to resurrect them, but now it's looking like they're not going to be able to do it. And so they've passed it on to Don't Panic. So I don't really think any of this really lands on Simon. I think this is still fundamentally the fault of Mythic, who mismanaged themselves out of existence. So I don't feel as someone who backed a Hell at the core pledge level, which is mostly why I've been following this, or rather why I've been getting the updates on this, I guess. I don't feel any sense of ownership towards what Don't Panic Games are doing. I do feel like, we probably all need to be more conscientious about crowdfunding campaigns and Kickstarter campaigns. And, I think seeing what happens to Simon will be another piece of evidence in the ongoing case against giant Kickstarter-based operations, or rather the move away from that. I don't know why these big companies like Steamforged or Awaken Realms have not been able to manage themselves out of crowdfunding into just pre-order system.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it shows, the more I think about it, the more I feel like I need an explanation from somebody in the industry, because it just doesn't make any sense to me as a consumer why we shouldn't be given more rights, given that these companies clearly should have developed enough of a catalog to support themselves. But we'll see what Don't Panic Games do with it. They're not a big company. They're, a small company that mostly do localization and anime board games. So we'll see what happens with that. I appreciate that they're still trying to do right by the OG backers 3 companies later.
Yeah.
At least that they're not completely oblivious to the sentiment that might surround those 2 campaigns. And then Barry's favorite's back. He's so excited for this. Barry messaged me in our private chat where he was like, I'm so excited. Guess what?
You know what? Fool me once, shame on me. No, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 6 times. Who am I kidding? Like, who knows? This could be the one. This could be the one.
This is Mystic Lands by John D. Clare. This is the spiritual successor to Mystic Vale, the very first series we ever did on the channel. Me and Barry and Dan playing Mystic Vale in board leisure games in Finchley in London, with an absolutely terrible setup. But we got to start somewhere.
Back when we did it live on the scene.
I think it's one of only 2 series we ever filmed anywhere outside of outside of the house. But it's so Mystic Vale has now since then had a whole number of expansions and a big box iteration. Although I think some Mystic Vale products might have made their way to crowdfunding. It didn't begin as a crowdfunding project. And many of the other card crafting games from John D. Clare did wind up on crowdfunding. You talked about Ruins, which I don't know if that was crowdfunding actually. I feel like that was retail.
I think Allplay just
I think that was straight to retail. But of course we talked also last week or last episode about Edge of Darkness and Dead Reckoning, and there's been others as well. This is, I guess, John D. Clare's next attempt to make the card crafting system good.
Yep.
And, it's always been a bit wonky. Even my favorite implementation, and I've played most of them, which has been Dead Reckoning, it's still a bit wonky. There's a number of things that they've had to do to make it work. It is not a deck building game. I think in Mystic Vale you could add cards to your deck as well as modify them.
No.
Just it's all
15.
It's all so that's always been a staple then of the genre.
Yeah.
But I think you have fewer cards in Dead Reckoning. Can't remember. Anyway, it's funny, despite I've only kept one. I've only kept Dead Reckoning. I never even bought Mystic Vale actually, but I did have Edge of Darkness. You can see our coverage on the channel. But I don't know. I'm still kind of interested in Mystic Lands. I still want this to work for him, And I'm just like, 7th try. He's got to figure it out by now,
Yeah, there's a little bit of information on the Board Game Geek page, but nothing definitive yet in terms of mechanisms. Discover the Mystic Vale origin story. So this claims to re-implement Mystic Vale, so you got to assume it's going to use the same kind of system.
Yeah.
Enjoy next level card crafting. Now, in Mystic Vale, you could add up to 3 upgrades to your card.
Yeah.
Would you believe that in Mystic Lands, you can add 4 upgrades to your card? Already one better. But not just one better, 33% better. That's a lot of betterness. But it lets you create stunning visual stories and deeper combos with every choice. Does it though? Does it though? What it seems to be doing away with is getting rid of the busting mechanism. So there's no blight in this. So in Mystic Vale, you'd flip cards until you hit enough blight, and then you'd have to either be bust and you wouldn't get the full rewards, or you could stop before that happened. This doesn't seem to be happening in this one. It is a pristine world before the blight. So do you play all 15 cards? That'd be too much.
That'd be a lot of downtime.
But it says here, no more harsh busts. Instead, withering lets you keep momentum and cycle faster. So momentum's an interesting one because he talks about the momentum system in Unstoppable, the solo hero series game for 1 or 2 players. Don't know if he knows what solo means. But the momentum system is something that he has going, and so you can get better cards the further along the track you are, kind of thing, and then once you reset, it goes back to the start. So it might be something similar like this. You could push your luck to get good cards, and then at some point you go back to getting the weaker cards, but you're not missing a turn in quite the same way. I would expect something like that, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep an eye on the campaign. I'm not... These are all games that I want to like. Mystic Vale was not offensively bad by any stretch, and at the time it was quite a novel contrivance. The problem was that the downtime got too much, and it was unmanageable, and the foil cards would spill everywhere, and you needed little boxes to put them in, and it just became the point where the squeeze was not so good that it was ever really worth any of the faff and the setup and all of that. And I guess it had that feel bad system of going bust. Never bothered me, but yeah, like you say, the app solved all of those problems. The app's fine. And so there's got to be, and I think this is kind of the thing about the card crafting system, right? Like, it's a system I really like in theory, this idea of not just building a deck, but building cards within that deck. Maybe it would be great to have also deck building in addition to just card crafting. I don't know if that's something that they've explored. He's obviously decided that a fixed deck size is quite integral to the system. So I can only assume that they looked at that and said, oh, no, this is too much, or it doesn't work. The big change in Edge of Darkness was that there was just one deck, and everyone's cards were in the same deck. And it was event deck, basically, and you were crafting the events to be more favorable to your faction. And then, in Dead Reckoning, they went back to everyone's got their own deck, and you're just sort of improving it incrementally. But, I have not disliked any of the games enough to say I'm not going to look at this, but most of them I've either not bought or not kept.
Same. We'll see what it looks like. It's interesting they're not pursuing the blight mechanism, because that was something that was taken into Living Forest, which I know you've not played. But the same kind of flip cards until you've got a certain number of bad symbols, in which case you either bust or you can stop before then, the push your luck element.
Yeah.
to it. So they've obviously moved away from that. They've thought maybe they can do everything they've kind of done with that element, and now it's a sort of existing mechanism that other people can play around with, and then they're going to try for something new.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think fundamentally it's a problem with downtime, because I don't mind the system conceptually at all. In fact, I like push your luck, and I like this idea of building bigger cards that are more risky, or trying to build out so you can play more cards, but they're all kind of, mundane. I like all of that, and then this concept of like managing when your deck cycles. If you build this big deck with like one good card, the more you can cycle faster, you can get back to that good card or whatever. All very interesting and compelling. The problem was, fundamentally, when you went bust, that was it. Your turn was over, and then you had quite a lot of downtime. The problem was that just the downtime. It's big downtime, And so, they've tried to solve that in various ways. With Edge of Darkness, they took out the individual decks, and it's a worker placement game with an event deck that sort of cycles. And I think you draft cards off the deck to play. I can't remember. There's like a river, and you draft a card to play on your turn, but then like you take other people's and they get some Benny. I think something like that. And then in Dead Reckoning, there's some encouragement for you to hold cards back to use defensively between turns and things like that. So, he's played around with that, but fundamentally, it seems like the system that plagues card crafting is downtime, and that's what he needs to fix.
And as I said, with Ruins, the setup and teardown time, the setup's done, right? But the teardown time at the end now, just even if everybody does their own cards,
I don't see how you can get around that. I think that you've just got to make a bigger game that's commensurate with the teardown. Yeah. Well, that's the end of the news for now. So we'll progress on to the board games that we've played. Barry's got some quickies he's going to talk about. I've got one big one I'm going to talk about. And then we're off to Germany.
Games what we've played. That is what this section is called.
It changes.
It changes, depends on the mood we're in. But it said at the top of the segment there, I wanted to talk about Wingspan. So Wingspan is a...
You might not have heard of it.
Exactly. Yeah, you might have heard of it. It's a little bit niche in a genre all of its own. But published by Stonewire Games, designed by Elizabeth Hargreaves, and has a number of fantastic artists who work on it. Originally, Anna Yaramillo and Natalia Rojas. Elizabeth Hargrave, I believe, contributed to it as well. Greg May and Beth Sobel, who I think now works just for Stonewire Games and making some burbs, drawing some burbs. So Wingspan, if you don't know, it is a very lightish weight engine builder. Kind of is. Yeah, right? I mean, I've got a newfound.
It's an engine builder for sure.
I've got a newfound respect for Wingspan. So I've been playing Wingspan digitally. I have everything Wingspan. I'll probably be getting the new birds that are coming out, and I've played a lot. I've upgraded all my bits. I've got little egg boxes and the first player bird bath, and I've got card racks specifically just for Wingspan, and bits and pieces, right? And originally, I didn't like Wingspan. I think I've mentioned this before. I played Wingspan, I was like, is this it? And I did not have a good time with it. But since particularly Oceania, the second expansion, which introduced Nectar, which is a wild resource, I don't like scoring the wild resource, but I like having one extra resource at the start. It does let me build an engine and do more with the game. So I've been putting some hours into Steam. Steam has a system of achievements by which it logs what you do within the game. And I've been just working my way through the achievements and having a fun time trying to do some ridiculous things with the game. Can I tuck 50, 75 cards under one bird? Can I... can I score 30 points off bonus cards only? Those kind of things are the challenges that it gives you, and you can do them, right? Some of them are harder than others, but there's a whole bunch of things in there that you can do, and it really kind of shows off what the game's capable of. Now, one of the things you have to do is play every bird. There are 446 birds in Wingspan currently, and it took me about 40 hours to play them all. The problem is the game doesn't track it for you. So I had to make a spreadsheet and make little check boxes on my Google Docs, and every time I played a bird, tick it off and work my way through the list. It doesn't even tell you what birds you've not played. because in the encyclopedia, it's just a blank card until you've played it. So I had to go and find a list of all the birds in Wingspan, and I had to make this, and I had to tick off all the ones that I'd done. And I'd maybe put 20 hours in before, but it took me another 20 hours to play all 446 birds. But I have been having a good time with it. Like, it's very sedate. I also did not like the implementation on Steam. So I know this, we talk about board games. I much preferred the implementation of Board Game Arena and playing in real life. I enjoy playing in real life. I don't enjoy playing 6 or 7 players in real life. That's crazy talk. But 4 or 5 players, real life is not so bad. Actually, that's not true. 2 or 3 players in real life is not so bad.
Yeah.
4 or 5 players on Steam lets you really get those once per turn player powers going and stuff as well in a very reasonable time frame.
Yeah.
So I've been liking that. And what I've liked is that I can see what you can do with the engines. I can see where the egg engine is, from the base game that was overpowered. I think that's been mitigated somewhat by the expansions. Originally, I would have always gone for an egg engine strategy, but now I'm like, well, actually, tucking cards is probably slightly stronger. But it's not the only way of doing things. The different cards that come out, you can go heavy into bonus strategies, you can go heavy into placing food generally isn't a winning strategy. Caching food is not typically a winning strategy. But I've not been going so hard into the game that it is played out. And Wingspan's a game I don't want to get so good at it that it sucks all the joy out of it. I like looking at the birds. I like looking at the bird facts.
Yep.
I like on the app that I can listen to, in fact, not just the app, but in real life you can get another app that you can scan the cards and you can hear what the birds sound like.
Oh, cool.
And,
I didn't know that.
If I'm playing in Wing Song, it's called, I think, and I've done that a few times. Like, if I'm playing in real life, I often just like, oh, that's a cool looking bird, wonder what it sounds like, and I'll scan it and I'll get to hear it. So mostly from the Audubon Society, which is the bird society that, the original, this kind of art style of birds and stuff. And it's just, I know people, hardcore gamers, as we are, somewhat poo-poo Wingspan. It's like, oh, it's not really, the engines you can build aren't that good, and it's not really that interesting, and there's only one way of doing things. And I just wanted to, it's an example of a game where the more I play it, the more I appreciate it for what it is. I'm not trying to break the game, which I'm sure is possible, and I'm not trying to always do the same thing. And I like that the Steam achievements in particular push me into doing things I would never have thought of really trying in the real life game. And I like that the real life game is still something fun you could do with a cup of tea, and the enjoyment I get from it is different than just the mechanisms of the game. And so where people say they like Wingspan, and if you're one of the naysayers, right, if you're one of the people that are just like, oh no, it's not a good game, it's not what, know that was me. I played a couple of games. In fact, I took it originally to when it was first out, Ben had got a copy, and I took it to the Haringey board game meetup, and I taught it there, and I was just like, is this it? And the base game still doesn't sing for me. I hate playing the base game. I need that one extra food from the Oceania expansion to have fun, because I want to play a bird in the food row and in the card draw row, and then I'm off to the races. Then I just see what comes up, and that's what I'm going to build. I'm going to build a cool card tucking engine, or I'm going to build a way where no matter what action I take, I'm getting bonuses for the other 2 actions I could take, and then I'm going to just spit out birds. I'm going to try and play 80 points worth of birds into my 15 slots, those kind of things. So yeah, been having fun with that. I thought it important to mention that I do like games at times, despite what people might think. So have you played the apps at all? Have you played on Board Game Arena, or have you played?
So I've played the app a bit on Steam on the charity stream, and I have to say thanks to Monster Couch, who gave me a free copy of the app to play and check out. I did not particularly care for the interface either. No. It's not ideal, and it makes looking at what your opponent's doing very difficult, which is not super important in Wingspan generally. I think that's one of the detractors from the game. And I always play on the competitive objective side of the objective sheet, because I'm trying to instill some amount of player interaction. but that's harder to do in the app. But it's a game that I've kept around. Interestingly, I probably have all the same complaints around as you with the base game. I have not played Oceania enough, and I did get it. I actually stopped at Oceania. I don't know if there's been more. I feel like Asia was a thing. Yeah. But I stopped at Oceania and I was just like, I don't know if I care for this wild resource. I liked the tightness of the original resource system, and the wild resource felt a bit like it made things too easy. It took away that tightness. But, I also have this problem where without Oceania, certainly even Europe, which was the first expansion, I think, the egg strategy is overpowered, and there's a number of overpowered cards. And I mean, they're aware of it as well. They've fixed it, I think, or fixed some of them. There's others I've just taken out, and they do have an option on the app to remove those cards as well.
Yeah.
So it's sort of known that these cards are too good. So it's pleasing to hear, I guess, that in subsequent expansions, the strategies become more balanced. I would be therefore interested maybe to revisit Oceania a bit. It's a game where it falls into an interesting area for me, because if I'm sitting down with hobby gamers, I'm barely ever even considering it. And so it's mostly something I consider to play with gamers who are more casual.
Mm-hmm.
And then Oceania adds in the nectar, and you have to discard it, but then also it's worth extra points in certain ways, and I'm just like, oh, this is almost too much. But
yeah, agreed.
But I do find that the sort of known strategies and known strong cards in the base game have put me off playing that as well. So maybe I just need to accept Oceania.
Yeah, that's fair. I actually don't know how balanced it is, because I'm not trying to break it in the same way. Potentially, it could be that there's still very dominant strategies. I know Jamie Stegmaier mentioned something in a recent video that he did, that Nectar was a misstep in as much as it should have just been wild instead of
scoring.
Well, not specifically that, but instead of wild for playing birds, but not for caching or other resource. Like if it's spend a wheat and you don't have a wheat, but you've got a nectar, you can't use a nectar as a wheat.
Right. So you mean it shouldn't have been wild for activating abilities?
Just generically wild to take that away, and then I think that also getting the I would like some sort of house rule, and in real life, like I just wouldn't score it. Like it's wild. You're already getting the benefit. You're increasing your engine. You're building your engine faster. If you can't win off that, you don't also need 5 points for playing the most nectar.
What about if you just used the base game player boards and just didn't tell people that it had scoring?
Specifically not. I would not. The base game player boards are the things that's bad about the base game. The Oceania player boards are the things that fix it. The what you get for the different levels of bird. So in the base game, you're getting a single food for your first column, right?
Right.
But in the Oceania board, it's a single food for the first column, but you can pitch a card for an extra food.
So they've powered up the slots as well.
Yes, so you can get going faster as well that way. So
well, that's good to know.
I always
noticed that.
It's something like that. I can't remember. I always play the Oceania board because you can just do more, and it's just more fun, and that's what I like. Fun.
Yeah, well, and I agree. Doing more is generally more fun. I do think original Wingspan took a little while to get going. That's why they came out with what was functionally Wingspan Prelude, where you could start with a bird or something, because it just takes a little while to kick off otherwise.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think Wingspan remains playable, teachable, and certainly pleasing in every aspect beyond complex card interactions, and that's fine. It's certainly got a place, and it's got a very broad appeal as well.
Yep. And you use it as a baseline for complexity, right? What is it, 1.7?
No, 2.7,
2.3. I don't know. You think it's right in the middle?
I think it's 2.6 or 2.7.
Okay.
But I use it as a baseline for complexity because people have played it. Like a lot of people.
2.47. There you go. Yeah, slap bang in the middle.
Is it 4.7? There you go.
2.5, like right in the middle.
Perfect.
Anyway, that's an old game, but just something I've been enjoying to play a bit more. A couple of new ones to me. First one is Temple Code. So this is a Lucky Duck Games publication designed by Johan Levitt, who also did Turing Machine, Chronologic, and Archaeologic. Other deduction games. The artist on this one is Jean-Baptiste Renaud, who's done a number of things. But there's not a massive amount of art in the game. There's like one picture and the cover, right? I mean, or the back of the cards. The front and the back of the cards. That's about it. So this is another deduction game in the style, not quite in the style of Turing Machine or Chronologic or Archaeologic, but in the style of Mastermind. Have you ever played Mastermind?
Yes.
Do you know? So you've got to figure out like Wordle, but with colours. For people, you youngins at home.
Listen, Wordle is Mastermind with letters.
Wordle is Mastermind with letters, correct. But this is only a 3 puzzle, what's the word I'm after?
Guess? Or 3?
Well, Mastermind you do 4, and Big Boy Mastermind you do 5. This one only requires you to know 3 things on there. Okay. So everybody's got a card. You've got your 3 icons out of 7 or 8 different icons that could be on there. Each player gets 2 cards, which have a set of 3 icons on them. On your turn, you pick one of them, and then you're going to compare that to the information on the back of your card. You can't see your one. You can see your opponent's ones. You can't see your one. And then on the back of the card, there is an arrow that lines up with the top of your mystery code. And it will tell you whether one's in the right place, one's in the right colour but the wrong place, or some combination thereof. So you could have 2 red triangles, which tells you 2 of your icons are correct, but in the wrong place. And what you're going to do is, through the process of elimination, you know that you've just seen green, white, blue, and you know that 2 of them are the right icon, but in the wrong place. So your next card has got white in the first one, and you do check white against it, and white's in the right place. So now you're like, hold on then. Or you get one that's correct. And using the power of deduction, you're maybe able to figure out that one white was the correct one. And the aim of the game is to get 2 cards correct before your opponents to win the game. Now, the additional layers of the game aren't massive, but like I say, you can see other players' codes. So when you're picking a card to check, they get the other one. Every player has 2 cards in front of them. If I were to take your card, you would get your other card to check. So each round, everybody gets to check 2 cards. So you can be like, well, I can't possibly let you have that because that's got 2 out of 3 of your icons. But it doesn't help me. But I'm going to have to take it.
Right. So it's like you've put here mini mastermind. So it's like mini mastermind, but it's a competitive game where you're also sometimes hate drafting better clues from other players.
Yeah.
Wild.
That's a good description of it. And it works. There's a solo version as well. You just do the same thing. You look at 2 cards, pick one, discard the other one. How many can you do before you're through the deck? It says 8. Is 8 even possible? No, 8 is impossible. I got like 3, and I thought I was doing quite well. If somebody does 8, I don't know how to do it. I have done 1 clue in 3 cards, and I don't think it's much more possible than that, but we'll see. But it's fun. I like deduction games. I very much like Turing Machine. I've not played Chronologic. I'd like to give that a go, and I've also not played Archaeologic, but as far as deduction games go, this is fine. Anybody can kind of pick it up, as long as you can line up the cards on the back of your so the arrow's in the right place, you should be able to play it. And 3 might seem like a step down from a normal Mastermind game, but actually it's necessary to keep the game to a reasonable length.
Yeah, and I suppose when other players are working against you as well, there's that additional hiccup.
Now, I would like to play a little bit more. I think, depending on the cards that come out, you could get lucky. Like, I've solved a puzzle in 3, but I've also taken 5 or 6, and I don't always feel like that was my inability to puzzle through what's there. It's that the cards that I was left with, or the cards that I was able to choose, were not the ones that were going to help me.
Mm-hmm.
And so there will be an element of that. That's why you've got to solve 2 of them, I suppose. That should balance out over the game. And at higher player counts, at 4 players, for example, you'll have more to choose from. So you'll be able to kind of work that in a little bit better. Head-to-head, which is what I was mostly playing, 2-player, you've only got like a couple to choose from, and they might both be useless. So I think it has some flaws, but not enough that it detracts from it being a fun little deduction game if you like those kind of deduction games.
Nice.
And the last game I've been playing a bit of is another head-to-head game, or a head-to-head game, and that is Duel for Cardia. And that's a little on the nose, Cardia as a place when you're using cards, but that's fine. So this is published by Handsome and designed by Fauzi Bohida and Matthew Rivero. Matthew Rivero did some of Vale of Eternity. I think he might only have worked on the expansions, not the base game, but in that sphere. The artists on this one are many. There's Florian Herold, Christina Kalida, Dominic Meyer, who's done a bunch of things, Ingram Shell, and Jonas Schmutzler. But some of them have only worked on this. But all the art's very pleasant and capable. And this is a 2-player head-to-head game of War with powers. So War, if you don't know, is in a traditional deck of cards, I flip a card, you flip a card, whoever gets the highest wins. Doesn't sound that interesting, right? But in Duel for Cardia, that same thing happens. Whoever's got the highest number wins. But the player with the lower number gets to activate the power on their card. And those can affect both previous and future battles, as well as limit or otherwise change what card your opponent might play or what you might play. So you might play a card that adds +3 to the card previous or the next card, and the next card even. Or you might play a card that will let you add 3 to the value of any battle. And those battles are constantly checked. So if your value ever goes above your opponent, suddenly you're winning that battle. And you need to win 5 battles to win the game. There are another couple of extra powers. There's cards go between 1 and 16. You've got all 16 cards in your deck. Both players have the exact same cards. If you ever play the 16 and can activate its power, the power on the 16 is you win the game. And so that might happen. Let's say your opponent's played +3 to the next card. They play their 15 and you play your 16. You've technically lost that fight, but you get to activate your power to win. Or you've played a card that plays -5 to your next card played. Your opponent might be, well, I can't play anything higher than an 11, or else I may immediately lose. So you've now restricted what they can play on their turn, and so you can instead come in with your lowest value card, say, or something that you want to trigger the power off that would typically be lower power. You know, you could play your 1, which gets rid of your opponent's card. You could play a card that has an ongoing effect that you win all ties, and then you can play another card that this round is tied. So you can play a lower card, goes to a tie, you win the tie. Those kind of things. So there's a whole bunch of combos, and that's just in one deck. You get 2 full decks each in the box. So there's 1 to 16 twice. And in addition to that, there's a deck of locations that changes up each game, like a special rule within these locations. And there's only 9 locations or something, 8-9 locations. But they're enough that it changes up what's going on. And what you can do once you've played the base game and these 2 decks enough is you can use any combination, but both players have to have the same cards. So if you were to change the 2 from deck 2 into deck 1, both players would have to do that, and that's fine, as long as you've got a number 1 through 16 in your deck. You can, nobody's going to come around your house and break your fingers if you were to make your own decks and have them different, but it specifically said don't do that.
Well,
so you've got to imagine they've tested it.
Yeah, I imagine that probably what they probably found was the uncertainty about what's in your opponent's deck made it less competitive and just feel too random. That's what
because
I guess.
yeah, because you learn what's in those decks very quickly, and because you, even on your early games, you're seeing cards that you know your opponent's not played yet, but you know that they have the potential to have them, so you're kind of playing around them almost from the get-go. So you don't have to learn all the cards straight away. My initial game, I didn't read the rules properly, and just like I got to the 16 quite late in the day, and they're just like, you win the game. This doesn't seem fun. What if this is the first card I've drawn? I was like, oh yeah, but of course you can never lose that on the first card played. So it was good. I need to play it a little bit more. It is what it is. It is a fun dueling game that outthinking steps for your opponent are things you got to think about. It's not so in depth. It's like a living card game where you've got to really, there's no deck construction element to it. You don't have to dedicate your life to playing this game. It's best 2 out of 3, so you're going to get a couple of games out of it just in a standard play. It only takes 5 minutes. You're playing maybe 8-9 cards around, if that, and yeah, it's fun.
I could probably do the deck construction in a 32 card pool.
Yeah, you just about remember everything.
Yeah, do all right with that.
So yeah, that's mostly what I've been playing. I've actually been playing a lot of things, but those were things that I thought were worth mentioning.
Because we're going to do one more, and then we're going to get into the Essen stuff. This is sort of a big one, so I'm going to keep it as useful as I possibly can. I got to play Nemesis Retaliation with the final product. So this is something I've played a few times already. I played a prototype, I played the TTS mod, but I finally got to play the final version, which is delivered now to backers, or at least a lot of them have. I don't know. I don't think it's completed, but this is the third iteration of Nemesis. The campaign was a big one because you could get all of the previous Nemesis stuff as well as a bunch of new deluxe components and things. But I already have all of that. Not the deluxe components, but I have all the stuff. I'm not buying more stuff for Nemesis. I refuse. But I did buy Nemesis Retaliation, the new stuff of that. Partly because I'd played the TTS mod and I liked what I saw. I can get into Nemesis and Nemesis Lockdown as well as a part of this context. I talked a bit about Nemesis on the last episode as well. And, I went on to say that one of my issues with Nemesis has been that it can be quite an inconsistent experience given its playtime, which can also be very inconsistent. And players can get eliminated, which is a shame. Because the only thing they can do is either hang out and try to have fun, or take over the aliens, which is a miserable experience for kind of everyone if you've ever tried that. I mean, maybe you like that. Maybe you've tried that and you like that. I don't know how I'll ever see eye to eye with you on that, but that's fine. It's already, look, don't worry about that. The point is, this is the new one. It's designed by Adam Kwapinski, who designed the other two. I'm going to name the artists. There are a lot of people credited on this. I will not go through everyone because they're all Polish and it's already going to be hard enough. Other than the artists, there's a lot of people credited on this, writers and sculptors and graphic designers, etc. But the artists are Jakub Dykowski, Peter Foxowitz, Patrick Yadrasek, Ewa Labak, Maciek Lachowicz, Pamela Luneska, Mateusz Michalski, and Peter Orleansky. That's the best I can do. If it sounds better in post, it's because I went and fixed it. Which I've done, because some of them were horrendous. My mispronunciations were horrendous. So I guess where Nemesis is, if you're totally unfamiliar with Nemesis, look, it's a long game. This says 2 to 3 hours on BGG, which I still think can be optimistic. It really depends how well people know the game and how successful you are playing it as well. Now, all three are semi-cooperative in the sense that you are all a team of survivors or some form of group of circumstantial allies who are trying to survive an alien menace while complete secret personal objectives. And the alien menace, in each game, there are 3 options, but each game has its sort of core alien that comes in the box, plus 2 expansion races that you can try. And in the first one, you're on a spaceship. You wake up out of your hypersleep. You're the crew of the spaceship. It's full of aliens. You have to fix a number of things on the spaceship. The engines need to be working, and the ship needs to be heading to Earth. And if you can accomplish those goals, then you can all go back to hypersleep or get into the escape pods and escape. Unless you have a specific objective that conflicts with that stuff. This is the core of the multiplayer experience, is that somebody might not be on the team. Like they need to make sure the ship goes to Mars, or they need to make sure the ship explodes, or they need to make sure that somebody else is dead. The sequel, Nemesis Lockdown, took that same concept, except now some survivors of that ship have been brought to this facility on Mars. And there is also the staff of the facility, which is some kind of research facility that happened to be researching some kind of alien menace, and now it's broken out. It's a new one. And now they're some kind of bat alien. In the first one, they are the aliens from Alien. It has the same sort of functions as Alien in the sense that, it's a big, crawly, scary alien. There's a queen alien that's particularly terrifying, and also it lays eggs inside you that come out your chest and grow into big aliens. All the core aliens follow that same mechanism. Actually, the main aliens in Nemesis Retaliation are functionally the same ones. They've got slightly different names now, but they're functionally the same aliens as the Nemesis. Lockdown stepped away because it introduced a new mechanism, which was the concept of light and dark. So it's kind of the same aliens again, but now they have super darkness powers, sonar or some alien thing that makes them better at night. And there was a number of other sort of complex raising mechanisms. So in addition to the introduction of light and dark, they introduced the concept of an elevator that would take you between different sections of the facility. So getting around the sections was difficult. If you couldn't take the elevator, you would have to go through the stairs, and the stairs were always dark, and that was dangerous. And then, of course, it also made the escape pods much harder because it's a facility. It doesn't have them. What it does have is like an evacuation bunker that you can drive to in a little van. But if somebody takes the van, then you need to get a spacesuit to go across the planet's surface. What the key difference for me, though, was, again, around this sort of concept of semi-cooperative. Now, I have played all of them solo. I could talk about that, but I won't. Leave a comment or something if you want that. I don't know. But the point is, this is all from the sort of because for me, conceptually what I like most about Nemesis is this idea of a potential traitor. That's where you get the most tension for me. I like also the idea that in Nemesis, you have the 2 objectives. One tends to be a challenge and one tends to be adversarial. And when the alien first appears, you pick one of those objectives. Lockdown is the same. When the alien first appears, you pick one of your objectives, which one can be more cooperative and or at least non-adversarial, because it's sort of what you're doing would sort of align with what the group needs to do. Like, for example, the aliens all have weaknesses. You can discover their weaknesses by taking their corpse or a human corpse or one of their eggs to the laboratory and studying it. Now, your objective might be find out what the egg-based weakness is, which is actually a helpful thing to do anyway. So it's non-adversarial. But you're like, it might make the game more difficult because you're like, I need to find the alien nest so I can recover the egg, and then I need to find the laboratory and take it there. So, in a game that's already quite difficult, like even when you're playing cooperatively, it can be quite difficult. It's really inconsistent about how hard it is, but it's generally quite hard. And if you're doing that task, you might need the support of your team. And if they're not supporting you, it could be very difficult to do. Whereas your other objective might just be make sure player 3 doesn't survive. And that might just be a lot easier because they might be in a really bad way by the time you pick that card. But the Lockdown added in this idea of the response team. So the military organization that owns the laboratory have sent a response team in, and they're going to do something when they get there. And each player knows one thing that they're not going to do. And then there's another thing that the game knows they're not going to do. And then there's the final thing, which is what they're going to do. And you've got to work out what that final thing is by process of elimination. So you can just ask people, and if you trust them to tell you the correct information, then you might work it out that way, right? Or, they might lie to you because their secret objective is you're going to die. There are various ways in the game to interrogate this information and find out what's actually going on, but again, that takes actions and time, and both of which are in short supply in this game, which is quite difficult. I liked the addition of the secret end state because it meant players were more reliant on each other, more reliant on what each other said. There was this scope to lie to people or be truthful. And, you get this tension where someone's like, no, I'm telling you the truth. Please just come and help me with this thing, and then we can escape together. It'll be better that way. And someone's like, no, I'm not going to do it, even though they were allies the whole time and they just couldn't bring themselves to trust each other. So that's the kind of experience of Nemesis I like. I like that tension of, can I really trust this person? Because it's a game that's set up where it's just much more difficult to do anything on your own. And if you all just split up and search for clues, you're all going to die. So you can't really do that. Retaliation is, I suppose, the biggest departure from the previous two. Lockdown is Nemesis with more mechanisms and this more interesting end state. I do generally prefer Lockdown to base Nemesis mechanically, but the problem is that it adds, I think, too many extra mechanisms. What I like is the new end state system. I don't really care for the light and dark. I don't really care for the elevator and the electricity and the lights are on or off. All of that feels like too much. And a game that's already very thematic, so has a lot of sort of moving parts that you need to manage. Nemesis Retaliation is more like the second film, right? Aliens. You're now the military team. You've got guns. You're going in, guns blazing. You're going to this facility that's been completely overrun with aliens. You know that they're there. You just don't really know what they are or the layout of the facility or what you're going to find there. And for once, it actually makes sense that you don't know the layout of the map because you, I guess, can't have that information. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's classified. Maybe you're from a rival organization. Unclear. The point is you're just not allowed to know, but at least it makes some sense. Whereas in, the first game, you're the spaceship crew, but you don't actually know the layout of the ship. Like, how did that happen? I guess we all forgot in hypersleep. Never really explained. Doesn't matter. But what they've done, so Retaliation gives you, there's a lot more aliens. There's now this sort of concept of sort of groups of aliens. Originally, they would walk around the ship, just individual monsters, walking through corridors and rooms and attacking you. No, they just walk from room to room, I think. In Nemesis Retaliation, there's now this concept of corridors, which you will walk through corridors, but you'll never exist in corridors. And the corridors will fill up with aliens, and then you can run through them, but they'll smack you around, and it's bad. It's still bad. Don't want to be hit by the aliens.
Nope.
What you can do is if you're in a room shooting into a corridor, you can just blast them with gunfire, and you get this really big die that kills loads of aliens. Whereas if they get into the room, you now have to fight them in close quarters, and they're much more threatening. So you want to try to manage them in the corridors and stay out of the rooms that they're actually in. Which is a really interesting system because it gives you this sense of being like an overpowered military person when the circumstances are right, and then suddenly it becomes scary again and you're fighting for your life via what is more or less the original system. One thing they've removed, which I really, really like, is it was possible to miss a lot when you attacked. And the way you'd manage the health of the alien in the original game is you would roll a die, and if you were lucky enough to do a wound, you'd draw a card which would give it a random sum of hit points. And if you'd equaled it or bettered it, it would die. And if you hadn't, too bad. So you might get, and then the range was silly as well. The range was from it runs away all the way up to like 5. Now you will roll a hit die, and they've simplified it so much. It's great. Now you'll just roll a hit die. And if you always add a wound to the alien, and then you check whether or not there's like the faces of the die are a critical failure, which is always a miss, but you still add a wound to it, but it's always a miss. Then you've got the critical hit, which means it dies no matter how many wounds it's taken. And then you've got numbers, 2, 3, 4. And if it has that many wounds, it also dies. So the more wounds you accumulate, the more likely it is to die. So there's still some randomization of the health, but at least you're always putting a wound on it, and there's always a chance you might just kill it, which is, I think, better. It feels more productive. It doesn't feel like you're wasting actions and then missing completely. So that's good. But the big change really for me is about the group dynamic, because now you've got this core mission that everyone's trying to do, and that's one of your objective cards. Your other objective card is, again, probably more adversarial, confrontational. There is actually two sets of cards. One is the team mission, and in that deck, you will have, we are all on the same team, so we're all doing the mission cards equal to player count, plus one extra card that says, I need the mission to fail, plus one extra card that says, I don't care about the mission at all, I need everyone to die.
Right.
And so it's kind of a bit of a dead of winter thing. Like, maybe everyone is on the same team. They all have that mission must pass card. Maybe someone's a bit of a traitor, and maybe someone's like a full-on traitor. I actually don't think it's they need the mission to fail. I think it's just they don't care if it passes. I'm not sure. I'd have to check that. But then you've also got the other more adversarial objectives, which are, stuff like so-and-so can't survive. Most of them are quite adversarial. But what's interesting about this is that you don't have to choose an objective when an alien appears, which can be literally the first turn of the game in normal Nemesis. And it can be also round 4 or 5. So the amount of time you have to sort of see the game state before you make a decision about your objective in the other two games, totally random, really unpredictable. In this game, you don't actually have to choose an objective at all. You could keep them both till the end and then just pick whichever one suits you right at the end of the game. If you ditch one during the game, you will get to draw a bunch of bonus action cards, which can be huge. And the first person to do that will get to draw like 4 action cards, and then it diminishes, 3 and then 2. So you're encouraged to pick earlier. And so that can be hugely consequential. And I really like how that encourages everyone to, because you still kind of have to play into your objectives, but it also gets like some people in a headspace where they want to hedge and do like both, but you definitely can't, because the game is too hard. And there's a clock. There's like a fixed round timer where I guess people are just like, they've probably failed. Nuke it from orbit.
It's the only way to be sure.
It's the only way to be sure. So the game, again, has these sort of escape mechanisms. There's a hibernatorium, the cryopods that you can get into, but you don't start there now. You start on this landing pad, and you have to find that and turn it on. There's the landing ship, which you can escape on when it shows up, which is a bit like Aliens, it's coming in, here it comes, and then it explodes, doesn't it? Everyone's like, God. But it adds a new concept as well, which is really neat. Oxygen, there's no oxygen in the facility. It does one thing that drives me nuts, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But everyone's got oxygen, and if you're in a sector without oxygen, you have to take it down at the end of your turn, and then you might suffocate and die. So you have to sort of be looking for extra oxygen and things. And it works really well. It really adds tension. I really like the oxygen system. I don't like how the sections without oxygen can have fire. That annoys me.
Okay.
As for such a thematic game, it doesn't need to be harder. Just make it a little easier and a little more thematic by saying fire spreads to the rooms that have oxygen. Oh, you turned off oxygen in this? I think it's because like putting out the fires by just turning off the oxygen and then turning it back on again might have been a bit too easy, but that's still quite expensive, and you have to find the rooms that do it and be in the right rooms at the right times, and it takes a lot of action cards. So I think that would have been fine. I wouldn't have minded a little extra rule about like fire being taken off the board if it's in a section without oxygen. I don't know how it can be there. Maybe it's some kind of plasma fire or futuristic spark fire. I don't know. But it just, it bothers me. As far as I'm aware, fire needs oxygen. So I'm suffocating in a room with fire. I don't like it. But I think this is the best version of the Nemesis experience. This version of the game is the most streamlined. It has the most player quality of life elements. I think this new way of managing the objective cards and the ways of escape creates that sort of sense of, are we on the same team? Am I going to potentially sacrifice my possible win to help you? Sort of dilemma. I think it delivers on that. I think it's going to deliver on that more consistently than the other games. I think the sort of corridor system with hordes of aliens just barreling through the corridors is more fun. The queen doesn't start in the bag, which is better because it means she's not going to turn up immediately and just wipe someone out of the game right off the bat. Players are harder to kill because they're Marines, which is great, because if players have to be eliminated, let them be eliminated towards the end of the game rather than the beginning. The one thing I will say is that this is definitely the longest version of Nemesis.
Okay.
Because what they've done by allowing you to keep on with your objective cards and sort of hedge your chances better is and by taking sort of the queen out. I think most of the games I've had of Nemesis, which have been the shortest, is because somebody died in like the first hour because the queen showed up and killed them. And then they just had to sit there while the rest of us played for like another 2 hours or 3 hours, and then we all ended up dying because the queen's on the board and it's really difficult. So I think that this is the most engaging version. It's the longest version, but it delivers on the experience of Nemesis, or at least the experience I want from Nemesis, most consistently. So I did have a really nice time playing it, albeit when we played, our game was, I think, 5 hours. So that's probably about as long as Nemesis is going to get. Everyone survived right up until the end. I think the 2 players who died very close to the final mark, or within the final hour of the game. Ironically, everybody died, but aside from me, they all had fulfilled the mission, and they just were too suspicious of each other and couldn't cooperate. So they were all on the same team, and then they just got fed up with each other and ended up dying because none of them could work together. It was brilliant. I had such a fun time with that. I actually had the 2 most adversarial objectives. I had the mission objective, which was you can be the only survivor, which I thought would be quite difficult, and obvious what I was doing. Getting them all to die without like outing myself as a traitor would be really difficult. My other one was a quarantine mission where I had to blow up the lander so that people couldn't escape that way. And I was like, that's fine. Do you know what? Like, once I've done that, they'll know I've done my objective, and then I can be on the good guys team again, So I lied about the lander being safe, and it blew up, and then they all got mad at me for a minute, and then I was like, no, but I'm helping now, and that they needed my help. Yeah, sadly, unfortunately, 2 of them died because they couldn't work together, and that left me and the other team player trying to survive, but we just couldn't. There was a slim chance I might have made it to the hibernatorium, but I stayed behind to help my teammate because that felt like the right thing to do. And probably the slim chance, but I was going to die anyway. So I thought, rather than die probably die a traitor, I'll at least try to survive or die a good guy. Anyway, I had a great time with it. It's still a very singular experience. I think if you like Nemesis as a cooperative game, I don't think any one of these is better than the others. I don't think Nemesis is a very good cooperative game personally. It's fine, it's okay, but it's not a puzzle. I've always said this, Nemesis is a roller coaster with a really low skill ceiling. It's hard to get like better at Nemesis, because it's so random and so much of it is so arbitrary. And so, what you learn in Nemesis really, like the key heuristics are, take it slow, don't take risks you don't have to, make sure you engage with the game systems and manage them effectively. And once you're doing that, everything else is out of your control, really. So I think this is different enough that it's worth checking out. I think if you were only going to buy one, I'd actually recommend you to buy this one. If it's a thematic thing, like you just really like the idea of being on a spaceship, I guess get the first one, but also this is just a much more consistent, better experience. And you could pretend you're on a spaceship. None of them are really distinct. It's just a bunch of rooms. Yeah, I think so. That's sort of my takeaway from Nemesis Retaliation. I don't think you need all 3. And previously, if you'd asked me, should I get Nemesis or Nemesis Lockdown? I'd say, what do you like? What do you like? If you want the player interaction to be more juicy and tense, and you don't mind overhead and complexity, get Lockdown. If you feel like, overhead and complexity needs to be minimized as much as possible, then the first one's always going to be the right choice. I don't think this one's massively more complicated than the first one. it has the extra oxygen system, but it's very light. And honestly, a lot of the stuff they've done, they've just added nice reference sheets and cards, and it just saves so much going through the rulebook. The rulebook for Nemesis is awful. The rulebook for Retaliation is better, but the player aids and the quality of life stuff they've put in makes it so much more manageable, and we can just get back to the fun parts much more quickly. So gotcha. I do really like Nemesis Retaliation. I'm borderline thinking of selling my other two and not keeping them, because I'm like, why do I need them anymore? The only reason to keep them would be if I wanted to finish the Untold Stories, which is the solo campaign mode. It's about 4 games of Nemesis. There's 4 Untold Story books, by the way, or 5, because there's 2 for the OG Nemesis. One is the core game and one is the stretch goals box. And then there's at least one for Lockdown. I think there's only one for Lockdown. And then there's one for Retaliation. And I had this idea of live streaming all 4 books as they came out, but I got stuck on mission 3 of the first game. And it's a long story, but the short story is I've done that mission a bunch of times, and it's never happened for me.
Never got the end yet.
Well, it's not a long story. I've played it 4 times. The second time I played it, I made a rules error and lost when I should have won. And I got so fed up by that, I never went back to it. And then eventually the patrons asked for it so much that I went back to it and failed twice more. And now I don't know if I'll ever bother. So we'll see. If people keep enjoying watching
pestering you,
maybe I'll do it. But that would be the only reason to keep them, I think, would be to if I were to continue to live stream Untold Stories. If I were a normal person that didn't do that, I would probably sell them both. Yeah. Unless you really, really like Lockdown. I think like the way Retaliation works with its 2 objectives and giving you the choice over when you get rid of one or the other, I think that's just going to lead to a much more consistent experience. Albeit it does, because players are involved for longer with more choice, and there's this sort of back and forth between the players, which is what I want from Nemesis. It's what I think most people probably want from Nemesis, because if you're just going to play a co-op game, there's a bunch of other co-op games by Adam Kopinski that are just as hard and better co-op experiences, particularly Frostpunk and Horror in the Orient Express. If you want this, just brutally, savagely difficult Polish co-op designer,
Yeah. Adamant. Yeah, like I didn't have the best time with the base Nemesis, but I might be open to giving this one a try.
Well, I think that the base Nemesis, when it came together well, really shined. I remember when we first played the prototype, and this is actually on the channel, and we actually all wound spoilers. So if you don't want me to spoil our playthrough from like 9 years ago, I'm sorry, or 8 years ago or whatever it was, but we all ended up being on the same team, and then we went back for each other to rescue each other and stuff, and it was great, and that was great. And then I think our next playthrough actually was also great. We had a really great time, sort of like, are we going to backstab each other? Are we going to betray each other? But then I've played enough games. I remember I took it to the games club and I was so excited to show it to everybody. And then the queen showed up immediately and just killed someone. And they were like, oh, so this is my evening then? And I was like, yeah, I don't think it really works without the player elimination, because it's supposed to be scary and tense. And player elimination, the thought of just dying in the game is quite scary and tense. The problem is the social element, At the Games Club, it was actually less bad because that person could just go home or sit and hang out and have a beer. But like, if people have come over to your house for a day of gaming, and then you're just like, well, now you have to go home or hang out here and just watch. And we had this problem as well at the play I talked about in the last episode, where some people had escaped, some people hadn't escaped, and escaping in the game is functionally the same as player elimination because you're done playing. And then it was just me on the board on my own trying to run the end of the game as quickly as possible. I'd borderline given up. I'd borderline wanted to stop playing because I was just like, it's just going to be people waiting around for me, and they're, we wanted this game to have ended by now. it's too inconsistent, and I think Retaliation is going to be more consistent unless someone plays like a dummy, and you can tell them like, if you run off by yourself, you will probably die and get eliminated. And at least if you tell them that they'll know, and then it's up to them if they want to do it.
Yep.
So that is my first impressions of. Oh, by the way, just for anyone who's tracking the expansion stuff, we didn't use any expansion content. We did use the alternate queen because the queen that comes in the core box is way too mommy, we decided. And Step on Me Mommy is just not the right queen for our dynamic. So we used the gross queen that Awakened Realms printed specifically because everyone said this queen is way too Step on Me.
Pictures.
I think I posted a picture in the picture on Discord. But it doesn't do her justice. Like you can't see her you can't see her trunk from there. The other thing is we ended up using both of the support characters, which we just added them to the draft and they just ended up both being picked. So we actually played with the sniper, the UAV operator. I was the scout and the final player was the captain. And that was great. Yeah, really fun time with those characters. Ammo was a big issue because we didn't have any big guns. But the UAV was fun and everyone enjoyed. So the support characters were a nice addition. I think I'd probably just throw them into every game. But we played 4 players.
Turn out King miniatures. Alien King as well.
Not in Retaliation, only in the first 2. They did gender swapped alien founders.
Nope, it's definitely labelled Nemesis Retaliation on the box. Literally printed onto the bit of plastic.
Well, then I either have that or I don't. I wouldn't have bought it.
Those are the 2 options, yes?
No, what I mean, sorry. Either it came with my pledge and I didn't notice because there's a lot of boxes, but probably I went for gameplay all in and I didn't get it because...
Gotcha.
What I mean is like, even though the alternate queen is not gameplay, they threw it into every pledge because of the comments about the one they put in the core box.
All right, nice. Some good games played then.
Some enjoyable experiences. I particularly enjoyed the team falling apart, even though they were all on the same team. That was the highlight of that play, even though it meant we all lost and died. But that's it for games we've been playing. Now let's talk about games we might like to be playing.
Games that are not yet out. I've gone through, I've taken out anything that listed itself pretty much as August, September releases. I mean, let's talk about Essen overall. Loads of games seem to be getting released. Hundreds of games that I thought were of interest at Essen, and narrowing down the list was quite tricky. I took out anything that wasn't for sale. I took out anything that wasn't released at Essen as best as I could.
Yeah.
And there's things that we've spoken about before, things that are expansions or re-implementations or things along those lines that I'll perhaps cover quickly, and then I'll talk about the things that I would like to own the most.
Yep. I also filtered by stuff that was only for sale and stuff that, I mean, the reality is I barely have time to look at anything at Essen, and so trying to demo anything there is such a challenge. I mean, we do definitely demo stuff, and we'll tend to demo stuff that's not yet for sale because the stuff that is for sale we can buy and play. Now, there are a few games where it's like, well, this is expensive, so we'll try to play that before because we don't want to commit to buying it if we can demo it and get a demo in first. But also like it's if people won't. But yeah. Anyway, so I took out anything that wasn't for sale. I took out anything that wasn't English.
Yes. Because I only speak English good.
Yeah. Well, you might be interested in stuff that's coming out in foreign languages first and that are language independent. But I don't have time to look into that and work out if it's language independent.
No. It's a tricky one.
So, English releases that are purchasable, please.
And that is what I will give you. I've got a bunch that are just things that we maybe already know about, be them expansions or otherwise. things that part of the same system, gaming system, for example. I could run through those very quickly, and they shouldn't be too hard to explain, but you're going to get them rapid fire. Let's call this the quick Essen mentions. So there's loads of things there that are interesting, and I would probably buy all these, but I maybe don't need to buy them because they'll come out in a couple of weeks anyway. So first one I want to talk about was the Vale of Eternity expansion, Curse. So Vale of Eternity is a fun, good game. Drafting, you build up your tableau for little pieces and try and get the most points that you can score over the 6 turns or so that you get to play. It's a good game. The original expansion, the Artifacts expansion, was fine, added extra elements to the game. This also looks pretty fine, but a little worried that it's maybe crossing into the bloat territory with it. Now you've got to be on the lookout for negative effects for the things that you're drafting, for the creatures you're drafting, or items you're drafting. And I don't know if it's going to be a bit too much for the game. I like how quick and fast Vale of Eternity is, both online and in real life. Adding more could be a step too far for me, but I am interested in it. From what I've seen of the gameplay, it doesn't seem too bad, but if they keep just adding small expansions, that'll be too much. But that should be there, and that'll be purchasable. One game I spoke about last podcast was the Unmatched Adventures. I just played the Amazing Tales, which had Mothman and aliens in it. I also spoke about the Turtles release coming. This was a crowdfund campaign, but it will be available at Essen.
Sorry, just to clarify, he's talking about little Martians, not the Xenomorph.
Yeah, totally different.
Yeah, Unmatched has a lot in it, Barry. You got to be specific.
Yeah, that's true. It's coming. It must be coming at some point. But the Unmatched system is fine. The Adventure system is a co-op version of what is normally a competitive, not just head-to-head game, but often played head-to-head. But you can go up to sort of 4 players, where everybody's got their deck of cards for their characters, and they're running around punching each other or shooting each other. The map's broken up into zones. This one is cooperative as well as competitive. You're fighting Shredder and Krang and Bebop and Rocksteady, and you've got the 4 turtles, and the Foot Clan and your Mousers, and all the rest of it looks like a lot of fun. One game that probably isn't particularly high up on anybody else's list is Deckscape Dungeon. So Deckscape is a system, a card-based system, a puzzle game, like escape room style game. Where you're looking at the cards, you're trying to solve puzzles on the cards, you flip them over to see if you've got the answer right, and then you move on. You're basically just beating your time. If you ever get stuck, there's a hint book or whatever you can go through, and if you ever get them wrong, you just add to your time. But I've played all of the Deckscapes and all of the Deck Detective games. Dungeon looks like it adds a little bit of physicality to the game. You've got adventurers that seem to move around within the dungeon, and depending on whose powers you can use to solve different puzzles. So I like the Deckscape series. I'll pick this up, whether from Essen or from just retail when it comes out. Also, not one that I'm in a rush to have, but one that I'm looking forward to. Then Bohemians is launching proper at Essen. This is a portal game, deck builder, where you live your artistic life in a bohemian way, and if you want to work, cool, and if you don't want to work, well, then you'll just suffer the hardships, but you can pursue the real passion, which is the art. Only half play the game on Board Game Arena. It's not fully implemented there yet, but it's coming. And what I played, I quite liked, but it wasn't quite operational. When we spoke earlier about alpha development and beta games, that was one that springs to mind. It is not ready for mass market, the public release yet, but the full game, you get the idea for the full game, and it seemed quite fun. The deck building wasn't massively unique, but the theme really carries through, and the choices you make, and it has a lot of things baked in to the game that you would normally have to buy cards for and stuff. So worth a play, and worth a more thorough look once it's out proper.
Yep. I'll just say Bohemians made it onto my list as well, just because I demoed it at the UKG. I played the wonky alpha game with you. I don't think it's doing anything revolutionary, but for a relatively light, fast, breezy deck builder, I think it flows well, and I like what it's offering.
Looks nice too. Now, one that's somewhat disappointing to some degree is Galaxy Trucker Do What?
What?
Now, this is the first expansion for the new version, or the first unique content for the new version that isn't like a re-implementation of something from the anniversary box or the previous expansions.
Yeah.
And I can't quite work out how compatible it is with the old version. There's a lot of things in there that that are standalone. They don't incorporate with anything. And you could probably add them to the old version.
Right.
But there's a few things in there that you require the new version for. And I don't know if there's quite enough in the box that if you've only got the old version, which is all I've got, you want to get it, or if it's mandatory to, have the new version to utilize most things. So there's a couple of bits and pieces up about what you could incorporate and what you couldn't. Worth noting the difference between the new version and the old version of Galaxy Truckers, like the size of the tiles, and there's a few tiles in here, so that's not quite going to work. Those tiles have different backs, so they're always separate anyway. So even though the tiles maybe don't fit the boards properly, you're not actually incorporating them.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that exact thing, because I have all the original Galaxy Trucker stuff, big fan, and as a big fan, CG gave me review copies of the new Galaxy Trucker stuff. So I can tell you that, yes, the tiles are definitely different sizes, but yes, you could definitely, if a tile was not part of the sort of sneaky snatch and grab part of the game, like it was from the missions or something like that, and it just said, add this to your ship at some point during construction, then you could easily use that in the original edition. It wouldn't satisfyingly sit there because it's smaller, but it would at least make sense in terms of rules implementation.
You could always glue a bigger back to it.
Yeah, but then it'd be above.
Oh yeah, okay, fair.
What you need is to print a little border with the connectors extended.
Yep. I'm sure somebody on Etsy will get on that.
But I've played both versions, and the connectors are not sufficient. The rules are not sufficiently different that there's not potential for some compatibility here. I have not looked at the contents of the box as much as you have. I saw some stuff at UKG. I like the look of the different colored little people. This is on my list as well. So I'm keen to look at it more. I'm always happy to look at more Galaxy Trucker.
Then another older game is Neuroshima Hex, and this is the 20th anniversary edition. Now, I don't believe it is adding anything particularly new. It's a new box, so it's already on its third edition of the game, and this is just the anniversary edition. I have played some Neuroshima Hex, but not a lot, and I don't see that I'd get it to the table a massive amount, so I'm not in for buying this one necessarily, but I wouldn't mind playing somebody else's.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've only played the app, which I've quite enjoyed, but I've never played it in real life, and part of me wonders about how easy it is to parse the attacks and all that different stuff in real life. I mean, I don't know.
I don't think it's too hard.
Well, I don't think it's too hard. It's obviously a very popular game. I think that there's something attractive about having the box full of the different armies. Certainly getting all the different armies in the app was really appealing, and they all felt relatively unique and different, and that was cool. And if you don't know, it's basically a skirmish game that's based around a hex system, and you put your tokens onto the hexes. You can put them pretty much anywhere, and what you care about is what they're looking at. So they'll have like weak sides and strong sides, and when at some point they'll trigger and they'll all shoot guns, and then you want yours to shoot the enemies better than theirs are shooting you, and have your most hexes survive for the next round of shooting. It's sort of a very simple puzzle. It's like I want to describe it as a skirmish game, but it's almost more of a spatial sort of puzzle game.
Yeah.
But it's a compelling system, and I can't think of too much else like it, like a really confrontational sort of spatial puzzle.
Yeah, because the timing's important. Like, if you can trigger your net ability, which will stop your opponent's one firing for then your slower acting but stronger unit to destroy them, and so positioning that net unit is going to be more important than positioning your attack unit, kind of thing. It's an interesting game, and I've not played anywhere near all the factions because there's hundreds.
There's a lot. I think there's
and
something
they're still coming out.
Yeah, and they're still coming out. Like you, I don't know when I'd get it played.
Then there is the Castle Combo 12 card expansion out of the Oubliette. Just adds 12 cards. I've spoken about it before, but these cards are delayed effects, so you can put them into your tableau but trigger them later in the game. So instead of having to trigger them as soon as you place them, you can build up towards getting more points. And it just, Castle Combo, for me at this point, needs a little something else to it, because either you're going for keys or you're going for coins, and those are like two dominant strategies at the moment. So hopefully this just gives you some options for shields or for types of cards that pushes it into the forefront for the same as those two strategies. But another little booster pack for that one. Then another game spoken about before is Underwater Cities Data Era, or Data Era, depending where you're based. And this adds a new building type and resource type of a data center and data tokens. I've actually not looked too much more into it. Like, I own everything else Underwater Cities. I quite like Underwater Cities. I'll get this at some point and give it a go. But that said, I've actually not played much of the expansion with the Underwater Museum part of Underwater Cities, so I don't know why I'm keep buying expansions if I just typically play with the base game. But
I didn't particularly care for Underwater Cities. I thought it was all right. It's just a bit too dry for me, and the downtime could get pretty bad. So I decided it was not a Euro game that was going to stay in my collection.
Fair. Not every game's for everybody.
And that's okay.
Yeah, it's still fine. A game that is for everybody and very highly ranked is Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth. And this is a new expansion's coming out. Again, spoken about it in previous podcasts. The Allies expansion adds 14 new cards and some tokens. No reason not to get it. Pretty cheap. Adds a bit of variability. I have tracked down all the promos. There's only 2 promos for the base game. You can buy them now from Board Game Geek store, but if you're getting them over to the UK, it'll cost you like 25 quid if that's all you're buying. So just be aware of that. It costs more than the game to get the 2 promo tiles. Get them at Essen if they're there.
I don't know if BGG will be there selling promos.
They're not selling the Lord of the Rings promos.
Bummer.
Yeah. So you're not getting them from Board Game Geek, but Repost Productions might have some.
Probably not. But we'll see.
We'll see. Then another game spoke about before, Forest Shuffle Darkmoor, new standalone. I've written here that I wasn't overly impressed with the game, but there's definitely more options for viable strategies for doing stuff. And I need to play at higher player counts. Since that, I have actually played it a bit more, and I've played at higher player counts. And it seems like you can do anything in this one. Like, you can go for anything based on the opportunity that you're presented with, and you should be able to score quite highly. It's got down to like the last 2 turns in all the games. Everybody's kind of going, maybe you're going for dragonflies, maybe you're going for cloven hoofs, maybe you're going for moors and ferns, and it's not score and put live scoring on Board Game Arena, and so you can see what people are scoring. And it's really come down to those last 2 choices where somebody's just got ahead and somebody's going to either have to draw and end the game, or can they get another turn so they can play more cards into their engine. And it was this sort of back and forth of, if I end the game here, you win, and if you end the game on your turn and I've managed to play again, I win. And everybody's been chasing different things. So I think actually maybe this could be the better version of the game. Maybe.
Maybe. I think it's sort of an interesting academic question, because we had one game on Board Game Shuffle, Darkmoor. Forest Shuffle Darkmoor on Board Game Arena.
Yeah.
I'm not. It's sort of known that I'm not a big fan of Forest Shuffle. I found the deer and deer and wolf combo to be too powerful, and also some of the other combos like the butterflies and things to be misleading because they just weren't good, but people thought they might be. And so the expansions have sought to fix that. I don't know if they necessarily have. I found certainly the first expansion didn't fix it enough.
Mm-hmm.
And actually I think I played 2 expansions. I played Alpine and Forest Edge.
Woodland, I don't know, yeah.
Woodland Edge. Like so I think I actually played 2 expansions hoping that they would fix it, and they still didn't fix it. So, or at least not enough for my taste. So then it's interesting, right? Because then we played Dark.
It becomes...
Sorry.
It becomes random because you're taking so many cards out once you've added the expansions that maybe... There's every possibility, it's not likely, but there's every possibility there's not a single wolf left in that deck when you start the game.
Yeah, because you said during setup you ditch a bunch of cards to get the right card count.
And so you can't rely on that as a strategy. But then again, they could also all be on the top. So,
yeah. But you could also argue as well that that's also a new problem that's being created, because now you can't rely on any strategy because you don't really know what's in there. And so it's maybe not a great fix. I don't know. But Darkmoor, we played once on BGA. I quite enjoyed it. But then it got me thinking about, like, I mean, you and I seem to be pursuing distinct strategies, and then that was actually working for us. But also, if it becomes too much of a point salad with no really distinct strategies, is that another type of problem? You know, like,
yeah.
So I think the good thing about Darkmoor is it did feel like there were a lot more points generally coming from more places, but it did also feel like you had to sort of have some kind of focus, and that those strategies, I'm pleased to hear that you're finding them to be equally sort of viable, because that's my chief concern. So maybe this is the Forest Shuffle for me. I don't know. I still like the idea of tucking pleasant fauna around places.
Yeah, although, again, why Darkmoor and not somewhere exotic?
Because ponies.
True, yeah, pony strats.
Like the ponies.
And then a couple just for the end of the quick mentions here. First one's Qwirkle Flex. Again, I think I mentioned that in a previous podcast. This is a version of Qwirkle in which Rainer Knizia got involved, and now you can score on the diagonals. The Qwirkle tiles, the aim of Qwirkles, imagine Scrabble with shapes. You're trying to make rows of either all the same shape or all the same colour with different shapes. And if you get all 6, you'll get 12 points. You make a Qwirkle. That's the name of the game. In Flex, there's now the same shapes and colours, except the backgrounds can be black, white, or split. And you will score on diagonals for the different colours. And so additional scoring opportunities have opened up. I don't know if it's going to be any good. I think it's just maybe going to be a step too far. The other Qwirkle games, like Qwirkle Cubes and whatnot, have not been good. Qwirkle Cards, not been good. This might be worth it. This might be different enough that it's worth seeking out. You could always play normal Qwirkle, ignore the background colours, and then the extra rules are there for that. And then there was 2 last minute sort of additions to games that I saw. So there is Kyushu and Shikoku, which are sequels to Honsu and Hokaido. And I own and like Hokaido. It is a card laying game where there's like 6 different areas on your card, and depending on what you cover up, you can move cubes around to go to factories to score points. You'll score for your biggest village on each side of the mountains that you build. You can only build 1 row of mountains. You can maybe... I can't remember what else you score for. And then this looks like it uses the same system. Not a lot of information about there. Looks like it uses the same system, but you've got different scoring rules, different objectives, those kind of things. So it's more of the same, probably with their own unique twist. I think Hokkaido's got the factories that Honsu doesn't. And so I'm assuming there'll be a further evolution or unique twist for each of both of these games. And they're simple enough that you can get up and running pretty quickly, and interesting enough that you're never going to build the same thing twice, you know?
Cool. Yeah, I'm not familiar with any of those.
What?
I know Shikoku, but only 1890.
Oh yeah, the train.
Forks game. Yeah, the
18XX.
18XX game, yeah.
Well, those are things I mostly think I've mentioned before, or are sequels or expansions. So those are all things that I'll be looking at potentially getting just normally.
Now, I probably should have organized mine in much the same way Barry's done. The first one I will mention as a quick mention is Recall, because I've already bought it.
Okay, yep.
It's the only pre-order I've done
around.
so far. Well, I'm interested in this one. I read the rule book. I thought it looked interesting. It much like the rule book for Revive, I really couldn't get a good sense of the game from it. I can see that it is a worker placement game where you're managing Euro stuff and you're triggering actions by plugging things into the board. So, despite the fact that they were like, this is not Revive Light, it does kind of look like Revive Light.
Okay.
I don't hate that. I like Revive, so I'm happy to be a part of that. It also has more designers. So it's got the designers of Revive are back, and then they've got a couple of newer designers who've only done one other smaller game. So it's Helge Meisner, Christian Admundsen Ostby, Kjelje Svensson, and Anna Wemland. But I just thought, I'll take a go on Recall and see how it is.
Yeah, like I've seen some of the rules and I've seen some of the sort of gameplay elements, and yeah, it looks good. It was on my initial list, and it's one of the top thumbs up ones, but I just didn't. I was thinking about like when would I play it again, right? Where's it going to fit? I'd have to play it to make sure it's kind of the game that's going to come out over anything else.
Yeah. So I guess another category might be expansions that I'm just going to pick up because I like the base game. So for me, a big one is Civolution Acceptance Letter. I've played a bunch of Civolution. I really like it. Barry doesn't like Civolution.
In fact, the expansion adds even more resources, doesn't it?
It adds.
So instead of the base 18 resources that you've got across 26 different actions, you've probably got another 40 resources across 1,000 different actions. Not interested.
It adds. So one of the things I like that it adds is a starting thing, like a starting thing you can trigger for benefits, which I like because it's going to get you going faster. It's got now animals on the board, which are becoming more of the tokens that you collect in the middle. And so you can create a new column for those. So it's like 3 mini modules. It's a really small expansion. And you can play with one or all 3. Obviously, if you only play with the one that accelerates the game a bit faster, then it's going to reduce the game time, presumably by a fraction. If you play with all 3, it probably balances out somewhat. But there's now going to be animals in the different biomes on the main map, and you can hunt them and tame them. And then you get a little chip that goes into that system, and it can't coexist with the other chips. It needs its own corridor, which is or column, which is fine. Mm-hmm. And then there's also more stuff to do on the board is great. I like that. And then the final thing is you get to start with some of these stage 4 chips, which are like special chips you can put at the top. So it kind of rewards you for reaching that top row. And because you start with them, you can plan around building towards that if you want to do that for your strategy. So yeah, keen to see a little bit more Civolution. There's also Federation Piracy, which is an expansion for Federation. I like Federation. This is a Euro game about sort of trying to control a galactic senate. And so there's a sort of a central game around sort of area control, I guess, and then 4 little mini games around the outside where you're also competing with everybody. It's great. I don't know why I don't play Federation more often. I'm keen to check out Piracy. Hopefully this will be a good excuse to bring it back to the table as well. Is Inferno, Plutus, and Phlegyas, which is for Inferno. I liked Inferno. I thought it was a really interesting, weird game. We played it a bunch. I would be keen to see some more variety, something that maybe opens it up a little bit as well. Opens it up? I don't know. I don't really know what Inferno, if it necessarily needed anything. It was a very tight, consistent experience that I generally enjoyed. I do think, like, after several plays, it did feel a bit like the bottom half of the game was really interesting, and then the action spaces at the top were less interesting, and I would like to see them be a bit more interesting or dynamic, but maybe it's just not that sort of game. But it's interesting enough that I'd be interested in checking out this expansion.
And just to know there is still a prize available for anybody that can tell me what game I'm thinking of that is Dante's Inferno that uses blackjack mechanisms as a resolution. I don't feel like I dreamt it. I feel like it was a real thing, but can't remember.
Something Barry designed at some point.
Yeah, in my sleep.
Oh, I do have another little expansion here. It's more buildings for Orleans, though. It's not particularly exciting.
No. I thought that was done.
I like Orleans. Orleans keeps going. It's funny actually, because last year they had the Orleans Big Box published by the German publisher DLP Games, and now this year they're having another big launch for the Big Box, but this is the Capstone edition, which is functionally the exact same thing. So, but I mean, I guess it's nice that the Americans had to do a separate print run of the Big Box, because now people who missed out the first time can get it again.
Yeah. Fair.
I did not buy the Big Box, mainly because I already have all of the Orleans stuff. I'm not buying it again, despite the fact that the Big Box did come with some really nice deluxe components. I think that's probably going to be my quick mentions. I've also got Duel for Middle-earth Allies on my list. I've also got Bohemians on my list. I don't know if it's a dead set purchase yet, but I think it probably will be, because it looks to be very reasonably priced.
And slightly cheaper at Essen.
€2.
€2, yeah. Well worth it. You'll practically make your money back. Now into the things I will almost certainly be buying, and by me buying, I mean giving you a list to get. Yes, I will not be at Essen this year. I know everybody's disappointed, but alas, if I'd only just got my passport renewed, and I now have a black passport.
Oh yeah, that's exciting.
Blue. It's not that exciting, but anyway. So one that could have easily fallen into the previous category of expansions and things that I've already mentioned is the Terra Mystica Fan Faction Pack. So if you're searching for this on Board Game Geek, it probably says it's only there in German, but then if you played Terra Mystica, you'll know that there's no text on the boards anyway. So all you need is the English rules, which are available and should be available at Essen as well. So this fan faction expansion is officially allowed. What's the word I'm after? Approved. That's the word I was after.
Well, I guess this sort of printing is an official acknowledgement, right?
Yes. So over the years, Terra Mystica has been a tournament style board game, and with the official factions, or the ones that come with the expansions and the base game, a whole system of bidding points for which faction you end up taking, or from which is available, and things like this have come about. There's a big competitive scene for Terra Mystica, and out of that was born these fan factions, and these fan factions, I think we're up to 16 for the expansion. Basically gives you 2 more options for every existing faction that's there, but they're all different names and things. So like Chaos Magicians, it's not just like you get Chaos Magicians Part 2. They're called something else, but the different coloured pieces. So there's 2 yellow factions, there's 2 green factions, there's 2 red factions, all this kind of thing. And
yeah, I mean, sorry, I was just going to jump in there. Like, yeah, they've definitely done this by color, because the core game comes with 2 different factions for each color, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, like the boards are double-sided, and that should be the case for this. I'm hoping, I've not seen the official printings, I'm hoping it's on the same kind of stock, all the art's there already, and as a semi-official, or as an official release. It's just that these factions have been created by fans, super fans for it. They've gone through a lot of playtesting, like years of playtesting. All of these fan factions are available on the Board Game Arena version of Terra Mystica, where a lot of games have been played. Everybody up to and including Jamie Stegmaier's been contributed to these factions and the testing of them. And this is a proper release that you should be able to pick up at Essen. So I'm also hoping, because I've not seen in the rule books for the expansions, they have a list of expected value for each of the factions. So if you're playing Giants, you should get like an 8-point head start, because Giants are not a good faction. And if you're playing Witches or something, you should start with, it should cost you 6 points. And so you could end up with like a 14-point starting disparity of some of these Giants and some of these Witches. And in the expansion rulebooks, there are a whole table of these, and I'm hoping they've done the same thing for these fan factions, where they fall into, or at the very least, given the comparisons. And it's been years worth of playtesting, and they continue to be playtested right up until pretty much now. Just like a few weeks ago, still testing was going on for them, so they should be very streamlined. They should fit into the game very readily. The rules shouldn't be difficult to pick up, and they shouldn't break the game in any way. They're probably played just as much as the original factions were, if not more so, considering how many people play the game now. And it'll effectively double the powers that you've got for Terra Mystica, and add some new and unusual effects for the individual faction powers. So this was part of what's not clear if it's going to be in the Steamforged new version, because there's sort of two parts to it. One, it being published by Feuerland and matching the existing components, and one that fans have worked on it. And so whether or not there's any kind of agreement there to publish those, I'm sure that they want them to be more available, but whether there's any kind of licensing or issues there. But this is one that I definitely want to have. I don't have the space. I don't have the Terra Mystica big box. I have just the original expansions, and I threw out one of the boxes, the Fire and Ice box. I don't think I've got any more space to put another 8 player boards, but I'll just, whatever. It can sit raised, a raised lid, if I get them.
There's going to be 10 player boards, isn't it?
Is there 20 different?
20 new factions.
Oh yeah, there you go. Fine, yeah. I knew it was 16 last I checked, but like I enjoy Terra Mystica. Terra Mystica is my favourite of the system. I don't enjoy Gaia Project very much. I enjoyed my play of Age of Innovation, but I didn't really like the book's extra resource. It was too much for me. I like merchants. Not everybody likes merchants in Terra Mystica. I like the I don't really play the Ice and Fire factions that much, to be honest, but maybe one of these will grab me. So I'm definitely interested in getting it, and I think putting 10 player boards is going to unfortunately raise that stack of games that Terra Mystica's in to be too tall for the shelf. So I'll have to figure out something.
Yep. I'm interested in this too. I like Terra Mystica. I'm always happy to have a bit more content. So, and I find, generally speaking, the fan stuff is interesting but poorly balanced. So what I'm hoping for here is interesting and well balanced. That'd be great.
It's been a big project, and they've had designers have come in. They've known board game designers have come in, designed some of the factions, and then been playtested fairly rigorously. So,
well, and Terra Mystica is a sort of a classic now. So it's had plenty of time. It's really interesting that a competitive scene has popped up. I'm surprised, but I guess not that surprised.
And then, sort of Terra Mystica adjacent, shall we say, is one of the top 5 hotness games of the con, and that is Fea's Swamp. So this is a game published by Fractal Juegos and designed by Helga and Anselm Oestertag. Assuming I'm saying that right. So they are the designers behind Terra Mystica, Gaia Project, Age of Innovation, and a little known game, as you pointed out to me earlier, Mike, Kai-Vi. And Thea's Swamp is a re-implementation of Kai-Vi with some Terra Mystica / Gaia Project elements added to the game. So Kai-Vi was an early design by Anselm and Helga, 2005, so 20 years old now, and they've learned a lot as designers, one would assume, during that time, and have put it on a new theme from Fractal Juegos. Although I don't really know what the theme is. What is the theme? Because there's a crocodile in the front, but you...
Magical swamp.
Oh, magical swamp, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, magical swamp.
I was like, there's a crocodile on a boat, so it's not like you're avoiding crocodiles.
Yeah, you're a little... There's a little axolotl and a little swamp crocodile, and they're anthropomorphic, so anthropomorphic magical swamp. That's what I've got for you.
Yeah, you take on the role of swamp dwellers aiming to be the most prosperous in the area. And so the game
capitalist anthropomorphic animals.
Become the Jeff Bezos of the swamp. That is the goal of the game. And it's all about area control within the swamp. You're trying to build up your island and your control of the island. You have the opportunity to trade with other players by giving them fish, and if you're the first person to give them fish, they're willing to pay more for fish than if you're the second person to trade with them, or they've already got fish. There's actions you can take on the board, which you can have a celebration, and everybody eats the fish, and then you can trade them more fish again because they want fish. The game's not all about fish, right? Let's be clear. As much as I'm making it sound like it's just a game about fish, it's not about fish.
It's not a fish economy game.
It's not a fish economy game. You've also got your unique faction board, and you can build up one of like 4 different areas, and each one has asymmetric powers on it. Maybe one faction's really good at getting money, and you can use that money to build boats and go and trade the fish or whatever. Or maybe one faction's good at actually building up so they can move their boats quicker, so you can get to further spaces. There's a few spaces on the board that's sort of a race to get to. You want to get there to get the torches to provide the bigger bonuses early on. There's a couple of different resources. There's money as well as gems of some sort, and you can take worker action spaces, sort of worker placement type spaces in a round to build the swamp, so you can put it on your area, or you can go there later in the round. It will cost you more, and then eventually it will start costing you the secondary resource, which is harder to get depending on the number of players that are there. I think the board itself is 2-sided, so there's fewer spaces on one side for lower player counts. Then taking from the Terra Mystica system is the sort of end of round bonuses. So if you pass quicker, you would get the earlier bonus. But if you pass last in a round, so you get the last choice, then you get a free swamp bit to place. So kind of a little bit of catch up there if you're falling behind. But also that could mean that you're doing well because you're getting additional actions. Yeah, so your actions are going on. And then there's a whole drafting system for player powers. There's 10 player powers sort of at the start of the round or at the head of the round, and that's going to determine your turn order for the next round. So you could take the character in position 1, which will get you $2 or something, I forget what it is, or you could take the character in position 10, which is going to get you really powerful bonuses, but you'll be going last. And it might be that you want to go last because you want to get that, you think you can stall long enough to get that free swamp and do what you need to be doing. Or you might want to go first because there's only a single opportunity to buy a swamp in a round. And if you're if you're first, you can take that and you can get that as well as perhaps potentially go out first and get choices. If you're in the middle of the pack, you're taking the number 5 and you don't know whether you're going to be second or last, right? I mean, there's some debate there. So there's definitely benefits to going last in this game and benefits to going first, and there's just a lot going on. It seems relatively straightforward once you're up and going. You're doing your fishing, your trading, your expansion, exploring abandoned temples. That's what those torches represent. And building settlements, but the cost for each of those settlements goes up based on the size of the island that you're on, the bit of the swamp that you're on, and the other players that are there, and how many other tiles you've got down, things like that. So it scales up quick. Like you've got to get into places quick, and then you've got to save up to build more. And it just seems good. It seems like it's a pretty interesting evolution of the Kai-Vi game. This incorporates the expansion for Kai-Vi and the things that it added, kept the good bits, then it's added the layers of the sort of Terra Mystica Gaia project type system onto it, and made the game shine a little more, I'm assuming. Right? Again, yeah. I'll reserve my judgment for playing, but it is interesting and exciting enough for me that I can see why it's shot to the top of a lot of people's lists.
Yep. I think it's number 3 or 4 currently on the
it's up list. There.
And I'm keen to give it a try as well. I also never got to play Kai-Vi, which was a 2005 release and very beige. This is obviously been modernized, both in terms of the mechanisms and also in terms of the artwork, which is by the Miko. Whether you like or loathe the Miko's art, you will have seen it on all of the Garfield games, so you'll have some idea about what it looks like. I really like it. I think the Miko's a great artist, so I'm more than happy for that. And yeah, I just, thinking about sort of Terra Mystica, and what I particularly like about Terra Mystica is that on the one hand, it feels like a really sort of tight Euro game with all of the resources that you're managing and the opportunities for sort of spending points for the magic and spending magic and taking those actions. It always feels like you've got options, but the options are never ideal, or they're painful in some way to take. And then it's all kind of, this really tight, sort of tense Euro game that's centered around a compelling sort of area positioning game. It's just great. And so if they've taken any of that sort of vibe, that ethos over here, even if it's a bit simpler, I still really like Terra Nova, which was the simplified version of Terra Mystica. So I'm dead keen to check this out and see what's going on with it. It looks really neat.
Yeah, like watching the looking at the rules and seeing how it plays, it's almost a game of two halves. I've not played Kai-Vi, but I can imagine the first bit of the game, as you would learn it, is Kai-Vi, right? The building up of the islands within the swamp and the placing of the your settlements and the delivering of the fish. And then I was like, oh, I thought this game was like Terra Mystica. I thought this was using some of those systems. And then you get to the back half of the game and you're like, oh yeah, that's just Terra Mystica through and through. And you can see how it kind of works together in a sort of new and interesting way that doesn't just make it Age of Innovation, that doesn't just make it Gaia Project 2. So yeah, I'm interested.
Yeah, and people have been saying that it's generally lighter than Terra Mystica, but it's still a 3.4, which isn't light.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that number could go up or down based on more people playing, but nice. Couple of other games that are of interest to me, and definitely ones I perhaps want to own. First one is Carnival of Sins. Now, whether the game's any good, doesn't matter. Looks great. It's got these foil-pressed cards that's all the rage these days. I'm loving that they figured that out, and now that everybody's kind of using it. And it's very new. It must be slightly more cost-effective than it used to be, but getting these foil-pressed cards is sort of the new bling on board games, it seems. And so this is sort of very Carnival themed and gold pressed cards and sort of tarot size. I don't know if they are tarot sized or just normal size, but got those. Anyway, the game itself is you're basically picking a card to play, and those cards have powers. And everybody picks a card face down. You reveal. And then based on what you reveal depends on what order you're going to get to take a dice. At the start of a round, you're going to roll a handful of the polyhedral dice. So you've got like your D4, your D6, your D8, D12, D20. And those are going to come up with certain values. And you want to get the highest value you can. You might have a card that's like, you take the first dice or something, right? I mean, that's a very basic power, probably not one that's in the game, but like your card will say something like, take a dice. Or your card will say something like, re-roll a dice and take it. So even if it's like, if the D20's rolled a 1, then you've gone in for, well, I can definitely beat that. Nobody else really wants to pick a 1, so my power is going to be good here when it comes to my turn.
Is the objective to get the highest number?
Yeah, so you're trying to add up your score by getting the bigger numbered dice. Or die, whatever it is. Or some might be take the 2 lowest value dice, and if all the numbers have rolled high that turn, maybe that's a good time to pick that card to play that power. Going first isn't always the best, because some cards will be take a dice from another player, and then they have to pick something else. So it's trying to figure out from the numbers that are in front of you what power you want to trigger for that round to get the most amount of points possible. So it's a sort of game of bluffing. It's a game of deduction. It's a game of chance with dice in there as well. And seems like it's not too serious fun. There's one card in there that worries me, and that card is, and it's not that it worries me, but it plays into the mechanisms. One of the cards, you get the dice that's closest to your card, and you can only play the card in front of you. And so after you've rolled the dice, you're not allowed to touch the dice. And it just seems like it's this little bit of physicality that could cause problems at times, and doesn't necessarily need to be in there. It's not like it's a strategy game anyway, but it becomes more, that's a dexterity element almost. Just doesn't sit well with me, and I've not played it to know if it's going to be a problem. But it immediately strikes me as something that's odd, even for the rest of the game, that you've got one card that cares about the dice that's closest to you, or the die that's closest to you. And I don't know if there's any other cards with powers that matter on positioning, but I would have done away with those and made it so that some overzealous dice chucker can't, keep the D4, can't just keep throwing the D4 in front of you.
Man, you don't want the D4 anyway.
No, but that's what I'm saying. But if they know that I've still got my take the dice closest to me card,
and
then they keep kind of positioning the D4 on the end of their hand and chucking it towards me, it's one small element that I think might cause me grief. But otherwise,
it's a really nice idea. I think it's going to be challenging to implement in a way that is sort of fun. Simply because often these things, when they're a bit fuzzy on the rules, and then it's like, well, what if they're both look pretty close?
Because you also put the card down.
Yeah.
And, do you put it slightly to the left, slightly to the right? If you moved it, it's
and wouldn't that also telegraph which card you're playing if you suddenly care about where you put it on the table?
Very possibly.
Yeah.
You're only allowed to play your cards in front of you. But in front of you is a wide area.
Well, now define that area. This is the problem with these sorts of things, like all the best sort of dexterity games and games that use this kind of physicality. It's a similar problem with communication restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
The more explicit and simple they are, the better they are. It's pretty consistent. Once you get fuzzy about stuff, it just gets annoying, And I know there's a lot of people out there that are probably saying, "Oh, who cares? It's just for fun." Someone will care. Someone cares. Someone is always caring about. Barry and I care. Somebody always cares, and the problem is if somebody
100%
cares,
of people polled care.
Yeah. Well, if somebody cares, you kind of have to, there's no better way to ruin a game than being like, "Oh, who cares? Just do what's fun." Yeah. It's like, well, following the rules is fun. That's why I play board games. So. Anyway, there's, when somebody's being particular about the rules, unless they're wrong, or they're like, I don't like, unless they're like, that's why the rules of the game exist. I want these questions sort of answered or dealt with. Anyway, Carnival of Sins is also on my list, and I'd written down some notes here. One was that it's a first-time designer, which, doesn't mean much, but beautiful production, looks like silly fun, first time designer. Now, I'd written that it's reminiscent of 2 games, but actually, hearing you talk about it, it's made me think that it's not like these. It's like a different one. So I'd written it's sort of reminiscent of Masquerade or Courtesans, which are sort of games about trading cards and hidden cards. But I don't think it is. It actually reminded me of a game called King of 12. Do you know that one?
No, it doesn't ring any bells.
It's basically a game where people play cards from their hand, and you've got these different characters, and there's basically a die or a d12 that you're trying to manipulate by playing these cards. And so it sounds a bit more like that. But I guess my question is, how are the cards distributed in this? I only have a fuzzy recollection of King of 12 because we played it a few times and we didn't like it.
Yeah, see, it's not got the best rating, 6.6 there. So everybody gets the same cards, but you can obviously only play each one once.
So you're trying to sort of track what other people have played and when is the opportune moment to play them, and then But you pick your card. Somebody rolls the dice, and then everyone picks a card, and then they're all resolved.
Yes, that is my understanding of the game.
Well, I think this will sort of live and die by how interesting those cards are then, and I guess how the execution of resolving the cards is handled. Well, it's one of those things where, like, Flip 7 is a game. I don't know why it's as good as it is, but I not too recently, but I bought Flip 7 despite the fact that I'd only played it at UKG with the hobby gamer group, and one of them kept going out. Their first, or their second pull every hand was just the same number, and they just kept going out, and we were all on pushing over 100. And then they were all still on 0. We all thought it was hilarious. And I did say to them, look, this is generally a net gain of enjoyment at the table because we're all having a wonderful time. I'm sorry, it's at your expense. But I've since played it more, and I found it's very versatile. It kind of goes with any group. Everyone has fun. It's fun to play while you're drinking. It's fun to just break out and just kind of do. It is barely a game. And if you talk to me about it on paper, I'd say that sounds terrible. But it's very pleasant and, highly versatile. So,
yep, agreed.
Who knows? Maybe this is a Flip 7 type fun thing. And people like rolling dice. Dice are fun.
Like playing cards.
And pretty cards. Like playing pretty cards.
What could be better? Right, two more really quick. First one is the Wondrous Museum. There's a small chance this comes out the week before Essen. I'm not sure, or it might even already be out in some places. I just don't think it's out in the UK. This is a set collection game, hand management, about curating a museum.
Yes, I saw this. I'm interested to hear what has attracted you.
By the way, there's a whole bunch of museum and archaeology games coming out this year.
Yeah, two things I noticed. One, museums and archaeology, loads. Lots of nature stuff, but also tons of 2-player only games. Loads of 2-player only games.
I think they're just too late to the boat on that one. I think 2-player was sort of last year's or year before's jam, but because I've already got hundreds of 2-player games now, I don't need any more. But previously I was starved for them. Anyway, set collection management game, creating a museum, trying to get most points. The cards are sort of space base size, just little thin ones. I don't know if they're actually space base size, but they're smaller than a standard playing card, bridge card even. And it just looks fun enough. Set collection game is what it is. I don't have a massive amount to say about it, but I quite want to give it a go. And then the last one I want to talk about, speaking of nature games, is Rewild. So I'm not sure where this is on the hotness list either.
It's Rewild South America, right?
Yes. So whilst this is the only game in the series, if this does particularly well, I think they're going to produce additional Rewild games. Certainly the publisher and designers, we're hoping this is a very well received and picked up, and we think there's the potential for a franchise of sorts in there.
It's about number 20, something like that.
Yeah. And this, the biggest selling point for this, regardless of the gameplay, is that all the art looks like Studio Ghibli. Like all the animals, all the creatures, all the art looks like it's straight out of a Ghibli movie. They have shown all their sketches and art style stuff, because obviously the Ghibli filter on AI was very prominent over the last few months. And so the assertion that, wait a minute, how have you got all this looking very much like a Ghibli film? But the original artist was doing this stuff long before those filters existed. Mm-hmm. So this is a game about building up an ecosystem. You have a board, you're placing tiles on the board. If it's like a water tile, you're only getting 1 hex. If it's a jungle tile, you get like 2 hexes, and if it's like a plains tile, you'll get 3 hexes. So you can cover your board more readily with the plains tiles, but they're less abundant in terms of what creatures are attracted to those spaces. You can upgrade those tiles by flipping them over. You're going to be drafting cards from an open marketplace, playing them, and building up an ecosystem to score points is the short version of that one. The appeal is very much the look of the game. I have seen that insects are not terribly abundant in the game, and that might be the only detriment to repeated plays. But build your landscape, plant your seeds, attract the animals. You built your little ecosystem. You're looking at collecting sets for getting points, and otherwise playing action cards to do stuff.
Yeah, this looks like basically you've got a board of hex spaces, and then you're just putting the land types onto the boards and then drafting cards from the marketplace, the open marketplace when you qualify.
Yep.
Yep.
But there are little wooden meeple parrots that sit on top of trees.
Yep. I don't really understand what the trees are doing. There are little wooden meeple parrots that sit in the trees. There's also a bunch of little animal meeples that seem to run around. I don't really know what that means either.
I'll just say it's building an ecosystem. You need the trees to attract the birds, and then to attract the birds and the squirrels.
Right.
And so whilst it could just be a flat token, instead it is a standee.
Right, but is this because certain animals can share spaces? Like, is the idea if I put a deer into the grassland, I can't also put a tiger there, but I can have a deer under the tree next to the bird? And that's more efficient.
Yes, like the carnivorous animals, you might want to put a deer out because you want to attract the carnivorous animal, which is worth more points.
Right. I mean, that's cool. I like that idea. I'm conscious that this can't be so complex because it's 2. Its weight is 2, which is very low. This looks...
But it's also not out yet, right? So
yeah, so who knows? It looks more complex than a 2. But we'll see. Yeah, it's a very appealing looking game, and the table presence is nice, for sure. But it's not a crowdfunding game, is it? If it's a crowdfunding game, people might already have it.
Yes, Kickstarter.
Yeah, so maybe the backers have already got it.
In fact, the newest Kickstarter, because you can still late pledge for an Essen pickup.
Oh, that might be nice to do.
But those are all the games that I'm on the lookout for, on the hunt for. There are a couple of others that I would definitely be getting, but I think they come out just before Essen. But in case they don't, I'll cover them next time.
Rewild also made it onto a list of games I'm interested in. So for me, I've got a list that's way too long that I need to work on. I am interested in Orlodge the Clock. I see that's come off your list.
I don't think I ever properly made it. I did originally put interested, but it was never... I'm just assuming it's another Euro.
Yeah, well,
that looks good.
So this is Orlodge, the Prague Astronomical Clock. This is the number 1 game on the Essen list, so I guess it's worth talking about. I'm definitely in 2 minds about it because I do agree somewhat with Barry. Having read the rulebook, it does seem like another Euro. And if there's one thing I'll say about the Essen list, particularly the BGG Essen hype list, is that Euros tend to rise to the top. Usually there is just a ton of Euro games. that are all fine,
Yeah.
systematic Euros. And if you're really into that stuff, then you'll find lots of sort of interesting little nuanced differences that will intrigue you. And if you're a gamer with broader appetites like Barry and I, then you might find this is too much Euro. So the real question is, how do you find the peak Euro? How do you ascertain which one is the very peak best Euro? And so I don't know if that could be Orloj the Prague Astronomical Clock. I did read the rules, and I note that this is also a game from Pero Loco Games, who are a relatively new Spanish publisher about 3 years ago. They released a game there called Satori, which was okay. And then last year they released Phoenix New Horizon and Concilium Urbis, both of which I actually quite liked. I thought Phoenix New Horizon was interesting. It's a sort of post-apocalyptic repopulating the world, but it's very Euro. But it had a lot of moving parts, and they moved in ways that felt fresh and interesting. And it had a board that you had to populate as well, and there was tension there as you vied for different positions. You're rebuilding renewable energy systems or something, but only one person could build on top of the hill, and you need it to be you first. And Concilium Urbis was interesting as well. That was a tile laying game where everyone had their own grids that they were building, but there was also a series of cards that would come up that would augment what was happening and what was scoring. So actually, it's coming back to me. We played this. There was a series of scoring criteria for the grid that you're building, and every round a card would be revealed that would augment the scoring criteria, either raising them points it was worth or diminishing them, potentially making them negative. And we had to put tiles in our grid, which would give us little crystals that we could then use to blind bid on whether or not we wanted this card to impact scoring. And it was really good. I really liked Concilium Urbis. Terrible at it, lost every time, but I liked it and had a good time with it. So I just need to get good at it, I guess. And now I will note that for both games that they brought out last year, Paraloco also screwed up a little bit, at least on the English ones. Phoenix New Horizon, half the copies were missing half the pieces, but they had brought spares. So they said, if you're buying it, please open the box before you leave the convention and come back for your spares if you need them. In Concilium Urbis, they just half the objective card, or one set of the objective cards was printed in Spanish instead of English, which is fixable because it's easily translated and you can just, the cards are never shuffled or anything, so it's fine. You can just put the correct text out on the table, it's fine. But, I do note that. So the Orloj Clock has two relatively new designers, and so it's interesting, again, that Paraloco sort of picked them up. I thought their choices about what to put out at Essen last year were interesting. You are making an astrological clock in Prague. I think this is a famous thing. I don't know anything about it. There is some kind of it's like a worker placement game where you're taking actions, but then when you run out of workers, you have to skip them. And there's a rondel. And you've got this sort of system where you can tick the rondel forward to find the actions you want, but there's a cost to that. And so I think it's you've got these tokens that let you advance the rondel so you can get to the actions you want better. But if you spend these tokens, there's going to be repercussions later unless you refresh them. So you've got a sort of timing consideration there, it seems like. And when you pass, because you're going to get to collect some workers back. There's 3 upgrade tracks on your player board, right, that make things better for your life. One of which is collect more workers when you pass. But there's a whole bunch of actions on the board the workers are going to do, which includes taking some income, upgrading the tracks that I just mentioned. You get to take an apostle to your warehouse. I don't really know what this is about. There's another area of your player board that you can send the apostle to later. So it's sort of a multi-step thing to get an apostle somewhere where it's going to be points, I guess. Or I think maybe when you send the apostle from the warehouse to the other area, you get some special free Benny. You can activate the moon, which is something that happens during the pass phase, but you can also do it as an action. And you get to move the moon token and get some income. And your income is going to be boosted by this one of these tracks you can upgrade. You can expand your workshop, which lets you hold more apostles, I guess. You can also complete a workshop, or no, you expand the workshop by completing a workshop card. It's like a contract that you're completing. I think it comes from a communal area, though. So there's like these communal contracts, and if you can complete one as an action, you complete it and put it, and it becomes an expanded workshop. And then you're constructing the dial, which is like an area majority game. So I think this is where you're like building the clock together, right? And like this is sort of functionally partly area majority and partly seems to be about spatial awareness, but I think you have to commit workers. So you're diminishing your total worker pool and reducing your, action capacity between passing. You want to create like large contiguous areas of your own workers for bonus points. So there's something going on there that I thought was vaguely reminiscent of the sort of gathering around the Last Supper in Jerusalem, which was the best part of that game. So I think that could be interesting, particularly if there's some contention there, And then there's this there's a sculptor that you can advance, and that'll get you a bonus action. And then there's another track that can upgrade how well your sculptor advances and gets you more bonus actions.
Tracks on tracks on.
Tracks on tracks on tracks. I made a note here about the deviations. So this is where you manipulate the action rondelle, and there's going to be a rooster phase at some stage, which will punish you for having used your deviations and also reward you if you've corrected the deviations. I think that means having restored the tokens that allowed you to do them in the first place. Not sure. But there's an interesting timing thing there going on. Looks like a real sort of points coming out of everywhere game. There's a solo mode I've noted here as well. Anyway, yeah,
back
I think
in.
Varys back in.
The game looks like I don't think it'd be as thumbed up if it didn't look so
Colorful.
phenomenal, right? Like it's so colourful. The color choices are great. Obviously, they're mirroring the horloge Prague, the astronomical clock in Prague, but it's even more vivid on the board here than it is in real life. I think if this was a beige Euro with all the same mechanisms and stuff, it would not be
as high up.
It'd be middle of the pack, but it does look outstanding, and one of the most or best looking games that seem to be launching there. But there are a number of games that look like this these days. It just happens to be at a good point for capturing attention. And I assume the game's solid, but I didn't see anything that was going to really capture my imagination. Something like, Unconscious Mind is another really good looking game. It was fine.
Unconscious Mind is absolutely gorgeous, and you're right. It was absolutely fine.
Yep. And so I don't want to get hyped up on games
on another Euro that's fine.
Yeah, just because it looks amazeballs,
Yeah, I mean, and I've written a big long list here of Euros that I thought seemed very similar, having read the rule book. I've put down Darwin's Journey, Teletum, Nucleum, Barcelona, Windmill Valley, Woodcraft, Praga Kaput Regni. Then I wrote most of Vladimir Suchi's games, and then I had to write Ross Arnold co-designed Woodcraft, and then I've put also Terracotta Army and Sabika. Now, I think this is probably one of the best looking of this bunch. I've not kept all of these games. I've sold half of these games. I think if you like that sort of game, you're going to like this. I don't think you need me to tell you that. I think, if there's anything that's sort of selling me on this at all, it's because Phoenix New Horizon was strong and Paraloco seem like a smaller publisher, so that's interesting. They might be more willing to do something a bit unusual. It's hard for me to get a sense of how painful the timing around these deviations and action choices are going to be. I think that could be really tasty. And I think that this sort of internal commitment of workers to the center area of the clock could be really tasty. If those are sort of generic and just kind of ticking over, I think the game will be quite banal. But if it gets a lot of tension out of those things, and the sort of tension around when you're going to be punished for these deviations, and do you run the risk of taking a subpar action or optimizing your actions for potential penalty, then it could be really interesting. So I'm going to go take a look at it anyway at the convention and see what's going on.
I mean, the deviation part sounds a little anachrony, where you're borrowing from future resources that you have to pay back or penalties.
Yeah. And anachrony is great.
Anachrony is a lot of fun. But yeah, that is the hotness.
This one, I'm quite excited about this. This is also on your list. This is generally not the sort of game I like, actually, but I might have time for this one. So this was the Fortunes of Scoundrel Bay, which is the pirate sort of open world adventure game. It's given me vibes of Dead Reckoning, not just the pirate thing, but also sort of the open world thing, and also Star Wars Outer Rim. And to an extent, I guess, Firefly as well, although I thought that was too big. But we played what did we play? The 9-year anniversary one or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a bit too much for me. That's like, we've got a series up on the channel of Western Legends as well, so it gives a bit of that vibe as well, which I was not a big fan of in the end. And so for me, like, Fortunes of Scoundrel Bay could be great. It looks like it's sort of it looks like it's that stuff, but pared down a lot. So you've got like just a few things. It says here on your turn, you play one card from your hand and choose one of 3 actions, which are recruit, sail and shoot monster, or invade. So you're just kind of moving around the board doing those things. There's some. It says here it's a pick up and deliver game. I don't know how accurate that is, but there were a few things that attracted me to this. One is that I do actually like Star Wars Outer Rim, even though it's flawed, particularly in the sense that there's no perfect player count, because 2 players doesn't feel like enough, and 3 players feels like too much downtime. So I don't know. It doesn't. It's sort of the best example of this genre that I've got, without including Dead Reckoning, and which is longer, but the downtime isn't as bad, I guess. Anyway, I've got time for pirate adventures. I don't want to necessarily dwell on how awful the real world stuff was, which is great here because all the art is anime style. So I'm not going to be super worried about. Maybe I should be more conscientious. I don't know what the historical setting of this is, but we're fighting fantastical sea beasts. So I'm just going to tell myself it's a pirate fantasy game. And it's some kind of race game as well. There is a sort of a sense of player agency over the end game, but then you might not actually win if you end the game too quickly because you have not amassed enough stuff. Now, I generally like this sort of thing because I like player agency and I like player control over the end game. I guess sometimes you can get a little bit into the weeds with this when players are not. Like, have you ever played one of those games where it's like the final boss is some boss you have to go fight? Maybe it's a cooperative game or something. And then nobody wants to end the game because they're all worried they can't beat it. So they just play for too long, get way too powerful. And it's like, oh, we played for 3 hours. We're uber. We just destroyed the final boss. We could have played for 1 hour because we didn't know enough. So I don't know. I'm hoping this fits into the sort of the tight, cool race rather than we played for too long because we all thought we were going to lose kind of player agency about the game end. But the designers are quite well known. Yeah, 2 of them worked on Revive. 2 of them worked on Santa Maria and Salt Fjord as well. They worked on Capital Lux 2 and Capital Lux, and a game called The Magnificent, which wasn't bad. So well-established designers. There's a 3rd designer here who's worked on like one of those designs with them. So this is clearly someone they work with or they've worked with before that they've brought in. So they've put down it's a 75-minute to 2-hour game, but I don't know. The art is pleasing. I quite like the art, and I like the sort of idea of adventure. I'm just hoping it's sort of quick and punchy, open world, sort of adventure-y, racy type game. That's what I'm hoping for. We'll see if it sort of delivers on that.
I'm looking for like a better Black Fleet.
Yeah.
Just something more to do that isn't just go around to pick up some cubes, try and dodge some English, and get to the delivery points. Just an extra layer, because I do enjoy Black Fleet. Never really played Pirates Cove. In terms of pick up and deliver.
You ever play
Pirate
Merchants and
games.
Marauder?
Once. I don't really feel like I want to play it again, to be honest. It was long and not terribly enjoyable.
So I think, if you're a fan of Merchants and Marauders or stuff like that, this is probably something that's in your wheelhouse naturally. For me and Barry, maybe we're looking for something that's a little more, that offers this sort of experience a little more to our taste, and this could be it. So I'll definitely take a look at this. The other thing is I've got Dead Reckoning, and I really like Dead Reckoning, but Dead Reckoning, the base game's quite a big game, and then there's just all these expansions, and what they add is like narrative adventure stuff. So Dead Reckoning is quite a big undertaking. So something that I could get to the table maybe on a game night out in at the club would be good. I'd be interested in that. So
this is another great looking game from Chill Fox. Who, the catalogue's not huge, but this looks great.
Yeah, and the designer is
sorry, Chili Fox. Can't even read. I just seen their logo.
Yeah,
like, why is there a chili? Oh yeah.
The opposite of a chill fox is a chili fox.
Exactly.
So another one that I really like the look of, actually, which is coming out at the convention, is The Presence. Did you see this?
No.
So it's called The Presence, and it's a one versus many game, which I do fundamentally have some issues with, but it might not be, because the idea is that the many are a group of people that have showed up at this haunted house, right? So there are people that have showed up at this haunted house, and there's a ghost. And the ghost could be like a friendly ghost that is trying to get you to work with it to sort of uncover some mystery. Or it could be like an evil ghost that's trying to trick you into the house, right? I like that concept. I like it's the same, it's the Nemesis thing again, right? Yeah, so it looks like there's a few things going on here, because it looks like it could be a fully. Well, did you play Rear Window, the board game?
No, the Funko one.
Yeah, I played that, and it's again a one versus many game where one player is I don't know how to describe it really. I guess the many are the people in the apartment, and one player is the person on the other side of the window.
All right, okay.
And they could be on your team, or they could be a murderer, and you're trying to work it out the whole time. And right. I thought Rear Window really punched above its weight. Like, it was very simple, but it did a really good job of sort of creating this tension around whether or not you were allies and whether or not you could work together. I really liked it. What I'm kind of hoping is the same kind of thing, because it looks like here the ghost could just be straight evil, or it could be a kind ghost, and then it's got to work with you. But if you're not doing like a good job, it can also like turn traitor as well. So there's like all these potential different outcomes for what the ghost is going to do. And it's got limited sort of ways of communicating with the players what it needs done. So there's this sort of deduction-y, puzzle-y element that you're trying to work out. And I just, I really like that idea. I hope that it is delivered upon in a good way. So I guess there's one more that I'm quite hyped for, and then I've got too long a list. I'm gonna save the rest for the next podcast. I'm gonna do a bit more research. I'm gonna come back. Here's one I'm definitely excited for, actually. Before I get to this next one, just very quickly, I'm not even gonna buy this, but if you have the chance, you probably ought to, because it's Junk Art Revolution, and Junk Art's great. And this is just a new version of Junk Art that's got more cities for you to play with. So it's got more little scenarios. The scenarios that exist have been refined. They've also made the scoring more gentle. I don't mind the brutal scoring of Junk Art. In fact, I think it's great. But If you were concerned that it might be too savage or you wanted to bring Junk Art to a lighter audience, Junk Art Revolution will do that for you, and it's got more content in it. And it's got the wooden pieces that they didn't do in the second edition, but they did do in the first and third edition, and the wooden pieces are the best. Junk Art's great. Love Junk Art. So there's a nice new edition from Ludonova, so that's great. Definitely check that out if you like fun.
Not for me then.
And by fun, I mean dexterity games. But this is about stacking. Junk Art's about stacking things. But the actual game I'm going to talk about is Children of the Colossi. Did you see this?
I did.
I thought this looked really neat.
Undecided list. After Leviathan Wilds of last podcast, I was...
Well, this isn't quite the same as Leviathan Wilds in the sense that this is a competitive game, 2 to 4 players. It's got to wait on BGG of 3, although who knows, right? Because it's not out yet. It might have been a crowdfunding game. I don't know. But it's a post-apocalyptic game, and the Colossi are these giant creatures that we live on the back of. You are tribes that live on the Colossi, and you take actions on the creatures. There is a concept of like sort of trying to manage your resource by using these sort of workers on your player boards and things like that. But then you've also got to commit them to this secondary area of the game where they're sailing down off of the Colossi to collect eggs to grow more Colossi to live on. And they're competing for the eggs. And so if you sort of commit them to that first, then you'll have a better chance of getting eggs and things like that. And there's some kind of sort of area majority thing going on there. But also, you want to keep them to work on the back of the Colossi.
You can hang glide in this one as well, which is similar to Leviathan Wilds, and you're gliding down. So there's something to look forward to. Games with hang gliding, or games with gliding. There's a new genre.
Well, I think what sort of attracted me to this, right, is this idea that you're sort of, it's like this sort of 2-zone commitment thing, right? Like I like this idea of hybridizing sort of Euro worker placement with some, player interactive area, right? So like the idea that your workers they're going to work on the backs of the Colossi in these action spaces up there. And then at some point you have to commit them to these ground areas. And if you get in first, then maybe it's like more valuable to you, but you can always come down later and try to upset that dynamic down there. So, and I think more points and things are going to be revealed in those lower areas as the game progresses. So I thought that was really interesting. And I'd definitely be interested in having a look at it. I understand that there's some amount of escalation as well as you take the actions in the upper areas. You can sort of build into future actions, and so it's almost like a little tech tree or something. But I don't know fully how it works, so I'll definitely have to take another look at the rulebook for that one. But at a high level, the concept seemed appealing, and I do like these sort of fantasy lands as well. Anything with some fantasy vibe. The art is nice. I mean, the components are not stand out in an era of crowdfunding, but it's got this appealing vibe.
Yeah, agreed. I did look at this, and I didn't read through the rulebook necessarily. I thought actually every player had their own little colossi, a little colossus, but it looks like you play with 3 out of the 5 colossus boards, and that gives you different routes down towards the bottom where you scoop up the eggs and do the area majority, the dudes on a map bit. Looks interesting, but yeah, I've not seen it. I've not looked enough to know whether it's definitely something to be worth picking up.
Well, likewise, so I'll definitely have a look at that anyway. I'll see if I can find out a bit more about it, and I'll let you all know. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go away. I'm going to have a real hard think about what I want to bring back to the table in the next episode. Because I've got, my list is too long. It's too long, and I need to spend a little bit more time looking at these rulebooks. But I have
fair. There's still loads to be talked about.
Oh, there's so many. I've got 60 on my short list.
Whittled it down, but
down from 750 to 60 on my short list. Now we've talked about like a bunch of expansions and a few big boxes in this episode. But what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to pick out a few that I think I definitely really, really am excited about checking out for the next episode. And we'll try to cover a few more of these as well to see if they've still made the cut. But I know that, Barry, you've got some others that are...
Yeah, so like all of these are games I looked at. I've covered about half of the things, and that is whittled down from my 70-odd list. But I've covered about half the games I was thinking of. Everything I've mentioned, I'd be keen to, or probably keen to have, or potentially keen to have. But they don't necessarily need to be an Essen purchase. Although a couple of the ones that I want to send you to pick up, I've gone over. The rest, maybe.
But yeah, I think there's a little bit more overlap as well here. So we'll come back. We'll do the big final roundup next episode to see what is made the list. I mean, there's a number in the top. There's a number of games here at the top that we've just not talked about, like SETI Space Agency. That's going to be good. Actually, did you like SETI?
Yeah, I liked SETI.
Yeah.
I've not played it enough to know how much I like SETI, but I did like SETI.
So I think, Space Agencies, we talked about that at the UKG. It's going to be nice to get a copy of that, get that played. Ada's Dream is actually up here in the top as well. That was available on, I'm going to say Tabletop Simulator to play. So I played that when the campaign was live. I thought it was okay. I certainly wasn't excited enough about it to actually pick up a copy. Sanctuary, I don't know, it's just not doing it for me. And you didn't even like Arc Nova anyway. No. So I think that's why that's not made the list. Coming of Age, I've not been super enamored with any of Danny Garcia's designs. Barcelona's the only one I've kept. I'm not sure how you feel about that. So I'm not massively hyped for Coming of Age either. I think it's a fun theme, but a fun theme only gets you so far.
Yeah, like out of his games, the Voynich puzzle, which I'll speak about next time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is of more interest to me.
Luthier is also here high up, but we've already covered that a whole bunch. And then, of course, Galactic Cruise is up there as well. And the Lost Ruins of Arnak stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that's quite high up the list that, just didn't... it was stuff we've already covered or we've tried or hasn't necessarily piqued our interest. But, of course, we have talked about the top two. And, we'll come back next episode to talk about
more.
Thanks everyone so much for listening to the podcast, for spending some time with us here talking about board games. And I hope that you found some useful information here. Let us know in the comments if you're going to Essen, what you're interested in buying or seeing there. Maybe there's something we've overlooked or something we've missed because of our filters. I could have missed the Terra Mystica things. So, let us know what you've seen that's interesting, that's got you excited. And of course, big thanks to the patrons for supporting the show and, helping us fund this in the way we want to fund it. We'll be back in a couple of weeks for more Essen stuff. In the meantime, bye everyone.
Bye.